House that, whatever they call it, snack shack, whatever. That is correct.
Yeah, it's special.
I get really one off. You want to buy them, David, you been down here all week or just?
I'll be down there a couple days, I gotta get back. Well, I may stay tonight, I may not, we'll play it by ear. See what time we get, what time is there. I'm not good at this.
Rona, you might make the Rona.
I might do better. I like it.
Alexis, can I give you a
Right
leg?
back to Richmond, there's an update. They can't-
I'll get pretty far back, I have to go to see the mayor tomorrow morning, and got a big day tomorrow. We go to Petersburg, and that's a big project, war troubles.
Video and audio.
So, there's a lot of things going on.
Busy man.
Yes. I'm going around.
That's the, that one right there, and right over the bottom.
So, you know, I'll tell you a story about a pipe. So my grandfather was really pipe.
Right.
And he was really smart. He went to MIT, so he was pretty, he's a pretty smart guy.
But if you did
So he once said,
You got some radar on the speed of the pitch on those.
Yeah. We got 4 microphones there, and there.
Protocols.
Oh, 5. There's 5.
Today, he'd be 100.
And I tell you, those things pick up a whisper.
But he said.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, you know, don't you?
Yes.
We just want to make sure the answer he wanted to
They
know.
pick up a whisper.
Start playing the pipe. We're ignoring, they didn't consider
Yeah,
ignoring. Just finishing the pipe,
Those are the
getting
types of
ready,
things that I
and all
have to
the while, you'd be thinking about your answer. Today, I'm sure even, you know, you can't spend the time.
We got plenty to choose from, you pick whichever house you want, we'll get it.
But I thought he was a really, he started out in England, and he was in the first class. And then he because he needs glasses. 1918.
You're probably 5 minutes after, because
He
you
needed
have to get off work.
So, yeah, so he was a good standing. So he said, I went to a trade school down the street from Mark. That's how you do it.
She's all.
Trade school.
MIT.
Trade school at the Creek Park. Sorry, not a bad one.
That's not a bad.
Okay.
Kevin, if you wish to speak during public comment, there's a sign-up sheet in the, right there at that table, you walk past
In the
it.
agendas.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Bradley's.
I see Cindy coming, so we'll wait, if that's all right with you guys.
Mr. Webb said he'd be a few minutes after 7. He actually did not get off till 7.
Cindy's coming right now, so. We'll just tell folks it's so hard.
It's gonna be crazy in the next 10 days, your parking spots. Where's your way to go right now?
That's when the worst fears won't live. The worst fears won't live. You don't have to do that.
Does anybody know how often?
Public discussion is like this.
So you had a spot.
Okay.
I don't call. I was told I don't call.
Hey, girl.
Hey, hello everybody, how are you?
I was just looking at it.
Business is good and
Just looking
Ivy.
at the, doesn't say.
Telling you, there's a lot of people out.
All it says is it starts and ends down. That's it.
That's the route.
Hello, Cindy, how are you?
There's only one, there's a one.
I think it's just. But I don't know.
How you doing, Mr. Evans?
I like all the day.
Okay, it's 7:00, and,
Try and come together.
I want to welcome you all to the July 26th work session of the Town Council of Ashland, Virginia. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely. Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Ms. Fetch? Here. Mr. Webb? Please note that Mr. Webb is absent at this time, but should be joining us shortly. Ms. Patterson?
Here.
Mayor Craig?
Here.
If you want to speak, you need to sign up outside.
There's a sign-up sheet right there at the door.
All right, so everything's set.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is discussion with the public and public comments. Before we start, I want to make a couple of comments about that. This is our first experiment with public discussion, and we don't know how long each person will take. We've got 5 people scheduled to speak. Hopefully, we can get through those 5 people in a half an hour, but I'm going to limit this to a half an hour because we have a very heavy work session agenda, and 3 of our council members have day jobs, and we don't want to keep them up beyond their bedtime. So, if anybody doesn't get to speak tonight, we welcome you. We'll include a public discussion at the beginning of the August 6th council meeting, so you can speak at that time and discuss whatever you want to do with the town council. Okay, our first speaker tonight is Mr. Harris.
Okay, shall I pull up here, or what?
You can stay behind that podium if you'd like.
Well, all right. I expect to take 4 minutes and 50 seconds.
Oh, good. That's within your time limit.
My 2 sons had the good fortune of participating for many years in outdoor sports in Abingdon, and I strongly support the sports complex idea. But I do believe that the council needs, from a common sense point of view, to address at least 4 areas where there's some serious concerns that people have had about the proposed site at Meadows before you finalize this matter. First of all is the issue of health, safety, and noise. An air quality study, a soil pollution study, and a noise study need to be made, since the proposed fields would be directly adjacent to I-81. Tests should be done at the time of day when the field will be in use. Now, let's hope the results would be negative, but I think certainly we would all agree that better safe than sorry when you're dealing with the health of the children of Abingdon. Second, evidence has come to light that the landfilling of the site has not been done according to appropriate specifications and procedures, so that uneven subsidence could very well occur. And considerable work has been done in the evenings, weekends, and holidays that have not been monitored at all. I was out there at 6 o'clock on Sunday evening and they were working. It seems to me that this could result in, this uneven subsidence could result in continual creations of holes and valleys and playing fields, and it's an invitation to a high incidence of twisted ankles and other, perhaps even more serious matters. Third, will the participants and the parents enjoy the experience with high noise level from the interstate? Do barrier walls need to be built? I think that's something that needs to be seriously considered. What would they cost, and would they adequately ensure a healthy and pleasant environment? Second issue is access. Cummings Street and Main Street, as I understand it, are going to be the 2 main ways to get to the sports complex. And as everybody in this room knows, both streets are already now nearly gridlocked with traffic during rush hour. And to that, the substantial increase in traffic that will be heading to Food City and the other businesses at the same location, and the question arises, will the children and the parents be able to get to the events on time? And will it be without considerable frustrations and delays? You all know what the traffic situation is in Abingdon. Size. Former town manager Greg Kelly stated in November 2016 that the original plan was to use the whole Meadows property for a comprehensive sports complex. We now have only about half of that, and it's obvious that the complex cannot be comprehensive, much less host tournaments. Should it be limited to one sport with more fields? Is there another location available for use as a more comprehensive sports complex? Should the town consider a partnership with the community college? For cost. I think the town should find the money for a sports complex. But as a taxpayer, I also want it done in a cost-effective way. How long will it be before facilities that start off as rather cramped, noisy, and hard to access will need to be seriously altered, augmented, or even replaced? Where will the money come from then if the town now spends large sums of money from the bond issue and other sources to build and maintain them as currently designed? Would it not serve the children of Abingdon better to consider all options and designs now rather than run out of money and be without adequate facilities later? If I may, I'd like to give each member of the council a copy of my remarks, and I assume there's a record of this meeting. Perhaps I could give it to the, let me see, I'll just hand these down, and maybe you could pass those around for me. And they're all going to make it up quite this far, but, so I'm sorry, that's my copy, it's written on. Let's see, that'll do it. Let's see, would you look at the copy? Okay. Anyone else need a copy? Okay.
Okay, council, does any of you all have any comments to make, Mr. Harrison? I'll make a couple of slides. Mr. Harris, the issue of the traffic, I'll comment on that because I know quite a bit about that. I don't know if you know it or not, but the town council took action last meeting, and there will now be 2 lanes entering the development from Cumming Street rather than one. In the intersection of relocated Green Spring Road will be not a 1-lane roundabout. Then that should improve traffic significantly. I agree with you that traffic is going to be at the sports complex and the complete development come online before the interstate improvements. I agree with you, there will be significant traffic difficulties. We don't know whether that's going to occur that way or not, but the new interchange improvements will provide significant relief to Cumming Street. I'm not really qualified to comment on the other matters, but I will comment on that one. And I'll let you know that if you remember that the air quality study was raised, air quality issue was raised a long time ago. The previous town council decided not to address it. I don't know what the current town council will do. Thank you very much for your remarks.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for your remarks as well, because I'd like to have a healthy sports complex for our children as well as whoever else is gonna play on these fields. So thank you for your comments, and I take the air quality to heart as well. as I mentioned it, and I'm no expert, but, I know there's a lot of diesel matter, but, particulate matter and everything that comes from those diesel trucks. And I will say that during, last night, during some of the, drilling that lasted up to about 11 o'clock last night up on top of that hill, there was a lot of diesel fumes that came right down into my area. So I'm permeated with diesel fumes all over my property right now at this moment. So I understand that, and it was kind of smothering to me. I have some issues with bronchitis at times, different things. So I know what you're talking about, and this does point in the direction sometimes, this pollution that we're talking about, especially since a lot of the trees and things are gone in that area, that filter the pollution from the interstate can cause, and I'm not gonna say I'm not an expert, but I'm gonna say it can cause cancer in young children's lungs and cause breathing disabilities. I've read that online, that's where I got my information from. So thank you for that concern. And I believe that we've all been talking about, or some of us have been talking about the different rocks and things, size boulders that were going into the field over on the 40 acres for the sports field complex, and that does concern me as well. I think that it has been addressed, I'm sure. Mr. Sullivan's been talking with Snowball and trying to get a handle on that. I think that's been taken care of, or it's been working out, it's been worked on. So we're very much apprised of that, and thank you also for that information, because that can cost thousands and thousands of dollars if that does sink our sportsville complex after we get it built, if we can get it built.
Okay, the next speaker is Mr. Macbeth.
How's it going? Yeah, I talked a little earlier that I could have made it at the last meeting because I had another prior commitment, I was out of town. But I did watch it online. And I want to thank you about the ethics thing, but I want to talk about the ethics first. Back in March 1st of 2010, the Town of Abington Council, Part 7, consideration of adoption of a council code of ethics, which they voted on, they put together and voted on as a council, and has been in effect since March 1st of 2010. Mayor, you said it on, I think it's 8 minutes and 50 seconds in, your comment, and I quote, it says, "It's not something legal." Well, if you read the second paragraph of the Code of Ethics, it's technically still in place.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yes.
Macbeth, I was told, I didn't say that it wasn't anything illegal, I was told that at my orientation meeting.
No, but your words specifically said it was not something legal. That was specific.
That's what I was told, Mr. Macbeth.
Well, the second paragraph states this, and let me read this, please. To this end, the Abington Town Council has adopted this code of ethics for the members of the Town Council and the town boards, commissions, and committees to ensure public confidence in the integrity of local government and its an effective and fair operation. Each member of the council, town board, commission, and committees, by virtue of election or acceptance of service, shall be deemed to have accepted the ethical requirements inherent as a term and condition of their service to the town. Each such member shall be presented and executed receipt of the same acknowledgement that they have read and agreed to the bounds by these ethical standards. To me, that's pretty clear.
Well, it's pretty clear.
But I mean, if you read it, you signed it, and the only person since 2016, actually since 6/20/2016, that did not sign that.
Excuse me, sir, I believe you're out of order if you're mentioning people's names.
I'm not. I said there's one person since June 20th, 2016,
Okay.
did
As long
not
as you don't
sign
name
that.
that person, you're okay.
Yeah, I'm not naming that person.
Okay, that's fine.
And that person finally signed it that night on a watered down version of the Code of Ethics that's been enforced since 2010. Right here is the one you have now. It's a very thin this is the code of ethics. It's been in place since 2010, and it was adopted throughout the state of Virginia, and the code of ethics for all committees. So, the comment I'm making on that, and that's why I'm very much, ethics is very important to me. And so when you state that, all they had to do is read it. That's a very second paragraph. And when you're signing things and doing things, you read them. But my understanding, that's still in effect,
Who are you
because it was
saying
not.
didn't read them?
Your statement in there, you said you kind of glanced over it. If
Mr.
you,
McBeth, excuse me, sir, here's exactly what I said. I'm sorry.
yeah,
I was told that it was not a legal document that I was signing, and our town attorney was there, but I did sign it, okay?
I'm not saying that you didn't sign it.
But that's what I've told, and I'm not a
Yeah.
lawyer, and you're not a lawyer either.
No.
So your statement that it is law enforceable by law, I frankly don't know, and we're not gonna solve it tonight.
Well, I'm
We don't
saying,
have an attorney for it.
when the council adopted this, in its statement, that's your constitution. That is what you're stating your council is going to do.
Mr. McBeth,
Yeah,
this is public discussion.
I
This
know.
is not a lecture to the town council.
I'm not lecturing the town council,
Well,
I'm just
You're saying
stating.
what we did and what we didn't do, and you don't know.
Well,
that. So-
I'm just going by from what I saw on the video, okay? All right, and it was all stated that, we're gonna be ethical about this.
Well, we are.
Now, if, the other question I
I
have.
don't think you have to worry about this town council.
Well, I kinda do.
Oh, okay.
For one thing, the meeting on the, that you had upstairs at 1 o'clock on the 3rd floor, that you put around, and the only person that actually objected to that meeting was Al. Cause he said, hey, we think, and you did it so you only had 2 persons of the old council there, and you called the other ones. And you had agenda given, put out, and I don't know why you decided the agenda you were talking about, council appointed, you were talking about treasurer, fire chief, meeting times, regular times, library funding, FOIA policy discussion, Green Springs Road design discussion. All these things could have done an open meeting. It should never have been down on the 3rd floor. On the 3rd floor at 1 o'clock, you have a meeting. I have all the emails of this, of what you did. This is from my FOIA request that I put out. Yeah.
That was before July.
That's right, you had 2 councilmen, so you followed under the,
Oh, you're saying.
I don't
that-
have to have a report as a meeting.
You're saying that 2 council members can't meet? Is that what you're saying?
You met with all the other prior, new council members, and you had an
Mr.
agenda
Beck,
that you talked about
We did exactly the
things.
same thing that we did last meeting, and if you're, last year, when I was, 2 years ago, exactly the same thing. We have to find a basis to get organized. I'm sorry, sir. And
But-
if there's nothing illegal about that. We acted properly and within the bounds of the law, and you're
I'm just saying, for open governments, you talk about open governments, that's not the correct way to start off an open government discussion.
We couldn't discuss those matters.
The ones you had on the agenda, you could have. Now, if there were things that should have been, I know there were things, other things
You
that you had
don't
to
know
do.
what went on in the meeting, Mr. McBeth, so you're.
I know what the agenda
Well,
was.
look, I understand you do.
Yes.
But you don't know why those items were on the agenda, and
some of it.
it's an agenda-setting meeting. We just decide if that is going to be on the agenda, sir. We didn't necessarily
Right.
discuss the details of it.
I'm just saying, for optics and everything else,
Well,
that's the issue.
that's your opinion, and that's
Be
fine.
discussed.
You've had
Some of
your
those
say,
items.
so please.
Yeah.
We can't get organized without having a meeting, you know that. Come on.
Well, I'm just saying, it's something that could have been done downstairs. That's,
Well, if that's
As
what
far
you
as
think,
the
that's your
ethics.
opinion, that's fine, but
The
we
other-
had to discuss personnel also, sir.
oh, that, I totally understand that, and I have no problem with
All
it.
right, well, we can't act as a body, so we can't declare a closed session versus an open session. What you're saying makes absolutely no sense, I'm sorry, sir.
Well, that's
Okay.
difference of opinion.
Yeah.
but, that's fine.
All right.
But I hope that now that you guys got your act together and doing things, I hope things are going to, because you're all on record that you all support this project and everything else, so.
What project are you referring to?
Both the sports complex and the project is going on with Food City, because
I don't know if we.
I even have
or
that
not.
stated.
I think we all do, but.
Well, I mean, you're on record of stating that.
Okay, all right.
And that's what I'm just getting at,
I
that's all.
don't think there's any question about it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Jim Moore.
Other folks want to talk, I'll be as quick as possible. First of all.
Take your time.
Watch the clock. Commend the council on reinstituting these open work sessions. I think it's an important step towards reinstituting open government and the democratic process involved all of the citizens. So you get a gold star on that. The point I'd like to bring out to you is regards the financial aspect of the development at what was the Meadows. I really think it's important.
Can I get you to, I'm gonna move the podium just a little bit this way. You're a little softer spoken, and I wanna make sure that you're recording.
I'm a soft.
I'm sorry.
No problem. I would strongly encourage you to undertake an independent, in-depth financial business cost revenue analysis of this project. Taking into consideration the theoretical tax revenues that may come from commercial development there, considering the absolute tax revenue loss that will occur due to the loss of commercial property on the south side of the interstate. Consider the cost of maintaining this sports complex. We know that we're subsidizing, we taxpayers are subsidizing the Coombs Center to the tune of $1 million roughly a year. This is a much bigger project. Do we know what it's going to cost us? I think we should take all these factors into consideration as you decide how to proceed. $10 million is a lot of money to spend. Once that line of credit is exhausted and is replaced by a bond issue, will there be sufficient revenues to cover it? Will all these theoretical commercial developments be built out? Will they be paying taxes? Or will the taxpayers have to supplement things until they are built and are producing revenue for the town? These are things we don't know. I think you should look into that. I don't know how quickly, you're presently just paying interest on this line of credit at Carter Bank and Trust. Once you replace that with a bond, pay that line of credit off, you'll be paying principal plus interest. We're in a rising interest rate market. I think you should look at all these factors very seriously before you place the taxpayers of the town in jeopardy.
Okay, Jim, Mr. Rose is here from Davenport, and he'll be addressing us, so you may want to stick around and hear what he has to say.
Yeah. Well, if I remember correctly, in December when Mr. Rose was here before, if I remember right, he said that Davenport does not prepare in-depth financial business cost revenue analyses. I think we need to have that done.
You're not quite right. I don't think that you heard me the exact right way. What we don't do is do feasibility studies, but I think when I'm done tonight, I think some things will be clearer. I'm not sure what you're asking for on the surface makes a lot of sense, I will say that. But what I've learned about where the development is, and we'll talk about it tonight, will allow us some comfort in knowing about some of the revenue sources and the likelihood of them. So I'll go over that.
So what, do you also have figures on the tax loss from the Hampton Inn? the
Don't
commercial
have
properties
any
on the other
figures
side?
on that. That's going to be something.
That's gonna be the net loss to the town, or will they have the cost of maintaining, running the center? Is there figures to address that?
I don't pay that operational side. That's when the town owns the town side.
I live at 498 Green Spring Road, and I travel through the construction zone every day. They are now excavating for the box culvert that will be underneath the fill for the Cook Street extension. This is a big ditch. It's 12 feet wide. When it's done, it'll be 8 feet high, and it's 220 feet long. That doesn't take into account the wing walls. I had not looked into this cut until Sunday evening, this past Sunday evening. And I traveled through this area several times a day. It was full of water with vertical sides. If somebody will fall into this, they will die. This is occurring now, okay? There's a house directly across the street from this excavation that has a toddler that lives there, and it's only 100, 150 feet away. This is a big safety issue. I spent almost 30 years as a land surveyor. I did a lot of heavy construction work. I have worked on job sites throughout my career where 3 people have died. Safety is a huge issue on construction like this. It's very dangerous. This is occurring in a residential neighborhood. And there's no barricades, no fencing, or anything else to keep kids, pets, people away from this excavation. And it's in a residential neighborhood. And I think it needs to be looked into yesterday as to the safety issue, as to what needs to be done to prevent any injuries or death in this location. And it's very real. And I don't want to see anybody get hurt, and I don't want to see anybody be liable for anybody getting hurt. But I think it really needs to be taken a serious look into immediately. And that's all I have to say.
That's on the Green Spring Road project.
Yes, this is right there. All you gotta do is drive down Green Spring Road and stop and get out.
Okay.
The excavator I saw working in that cut today, it was, you know how big these excavators are, you've seen them. It was at least halfway up the side, and they were in there working in these, and they're a vertical cut. You fall in them, you're not gonna get out. Now, I don't know if they've excavated out the downhill side of it or not, but Sunday when I looked in it, they hadn't, and it was full of water. And I'm just looking out for the safety of
Thank
people
you.
and the public. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Council, we allocated a half an hour for this, and our half an hour is up. We've got, we've got 2 more speakers. I know you've got day jobs and we've got a long agenda. Do you wanna let these 2 speakers go, or do you wanna?
It's fine. I'm fine with that, but I wanted, may I make a,
Let me see what we're
Well,
done.
that's fine.
Okay, all right, well,
may I make a
Sure,
comment on what
sure.
Kevin said? Mr. Sullivan, did you seek into what we talked about in that culvert and get any advice from Mr. Bollick or anybody?
I don't know, I didn't hear back from Matt. Matt and I discussed it briefly. But it should be noted that in the Commonwealth, it's against the law to trespass into the construction site, issue 1. So anybody who's there is there illegally, first of all. Now, that doesn't mitigate the safety issue. However, the liability component, of course, is gonna be on the contractor. So that's something that we do need to think about. I appreciate the information about the toddler.
Well, there's other kids that live in the neighborhood too.
However, the onus would be on the parents to make sure that their children
Yeah.
are in the right place. You do have a safety concern, which, Mr. Bowler, we can reach out to the contractor again to see if they want to do any type of fencing. Here again, though, how much fencing is necessary? Can they climb over the fence? Will they climb over it? I mean, there's only so many things that you can do. There are things that do raise a concern. Possibility, yeah, probability, I mean, that's what you've got to weigh.
What type of fencing?
Some of the things he mentioned are probably violations of OSHA, Matt, a vertical vertical trench is probably a OSHA violation.
Yeah,
We need to make
Every-
sure the contractor's aware of his responsibilities to comply with the law.
Every job I've ever been on where they've had excavation, it depends on how deep the cut is. And, of course, this cut is not really that deep. It really isn't.
How deep is it?
I don't know, I haven't looked at it since last Sunday evening, which was what, 4 days ago. And that's the first time I looked at it. And I was kind of shocked what I saw, because on my crew, every day, I was always all about safety, eyes in the back of your head. This is back in the days when you had to pound wood in between all the equipment when they were running around. Thank God don't have to do that stuff anymore. GPS is taking care of that. So modern day technology. But on deeper cuts, they would have to step it
Right.
to prevent collapses and
Right,
things like
right,
that.
right. And
Of course, now
you're-
this excavation isn't that deep. And I really don't know how deep it is,
Okay.
I'll be honest.
All right.
But it is dangerous. I was working on a reservoir. We were building a reservoir for a municipality for water storage. And I myself tumbled down a steep, loose slope, blew out my knee, and I was in a knee brace from my hip to my toes for 6 months. So it's very easy to get hurt on heavy construction like this. And I don't want to see anybody get hurt,
Yeah, I understand.
much less killed.
Nobody does.
So that's why I just wanted to bring it to the attention of everybody.
Okay.
So,
We're gonna notify the contractor, make sure he puts in a copy. Thank you. So y'all wanna go ahead with the other speakers? Thank
I
you,
think
Kim.
I'm next, so everything that I was gonna say has been addressed.
Oh, okay.
So
Thanks,
for
Mike.
time,
All right, the next speaker is Joe Levine.
Hi, thanks. To start with, one of the things that Warren Harris said, talking about the possibility of a noise barrier wall, just to point out that the noise barrier wall could also help with preventing diesel fumes getting onto the sports complex for air quality, because as a chemist, all the diesel, particulate matter, everything, it's all heavier than air, it sinks. So if you do put the sound wall in, it would help with the air quality as well, but I think it is a good idea to monitor it. What I wanted to speak to, I actually had two different items. One is the financial analysis, and I'm glad we're gonna hear some more tonight. But on September the 5th of 2017, Friends of Abington issued a position statement requesting a comprehensive financial analysis. In December of 18, Cindy Patterson requested a comprehensive financial analysis. Wayne Craig seconded it. It was voted down 2-3. Of course, we have a new town council now. We have Mr. Rose back to explain more, so hopefully we'll learn quite a bit. And I guess one of my questions is, when Mr. Rose makes his presentation, will it be a presentation and nobody says anything, or will it be an open, can members of the audience ask questions? Just because there are some things that if you can't, then, I'd like to point out now, as Jim did, the idea of the cost of running the sports complex after it's finished. My understanding, talking to the finance people, is that nothing's ever been considered on that, and supposedly you've never considered anything, so that's an important part of the total cost of this project, and the cost payback analysis. And then, of course, as Jim pointed out, you've got to look at the known cost of lost revenue from the businesses that will be closed down as you have the interstate work done, like the Hampton Inn goes away for sure. You lose all those revenues, both property tax and meals and lodging. And you also have, I think there's probably been nothing done to look at the cost of lost revenue on Main Street for meals and lodging as new ones come in. I mean, what comes in is not gonna be 100% gravy to the town. There is gonna be some offsetting, and I'm just curious how much of that's already been done. And then also the cash flow analysis. The other thing that I wanted to speak about was the sports complex itself. At the at the last planning commission, there was a presentation on the, I think it was an 80% view of what's been done. It was either 80 or 90%. I'd like to ask that before we go any further with this and spend any more money, that the town council or the town have a open discussion with the public, maybe out at the higher ed center, I mean, it's been a small group of people have looked at it and a small group of people have worked on it. I think that there may be some good ideas in the community. Two that I'd offer today to be considered. One is the parking lots. There's two parking lots. There's one for the softball fields, there's one for the soccer field. They're asphalt parking lots. That's 100% runoff. Every bit of water that runs on it is gonna pick up the oil and grease from the cars that are parked there, and it's gonna run them into Nan's property, or through Nan's property into Town Green. You know, let's consider, instead of asphalt parking lot, let's consider a parking lot with the turf grass type thing, where you put down almost concrete honeycomb, and the grass can grow through it, it can be mowed. It's stable, it's a great parking lot, they use them a lot. As a matter of fact, they're mostly designed for sporting events, public events. They use them a lot in Europe, and it's really great. You park on it, 90% of all the water drains into the ground, it doesn't run off. You know,
That same concept is on our farmer's market. That was put in the farmer's market,
Right.
but that's.
Consider, you know, consider that on, rather than asphalt. The other thing is you've got the trail that goes from the, what I call the soccer field parking lots, around by Hilton's property and out to the Creeper Trail. Consider changing that. You know, if somebody's at the baseball field, they gotta go all the way down and around. If somebody from the public is walking the Creeper Trail and wants to go what will eventually, according to the Section 106 review, become a museum, the Mansion House, they've gotta get off, they gotta walk all the way around. Consider having the two parking lots, have a trail go into the Mansion House, which is gonna be the museum, you're hoping to attract some tourists there, and then have the access from the sports field, or from the facility to the Creeper Trail, have it be a road that goes between the baseball fields and the soccer fields, goes directly from the Creeper Trail up to the museum. And that way, it's not just sports people that are there, or people that are coming to park their cars there and ride the trail. People walking the trail have an easy access up to the museum. And try to tie it in and, you know, but what I'm really asking is, please hold a public discussion, maybe out of the Highlands Community College. Get the public input from all the citizens of Abington before continuing to finalize the design.
Thank you, Joe. Well, I'll make one comment that I personally favor public discussion, just from the idea of, that we just received about the pavement and the parking. I think the public can give us ideas like that are beneficial. We can, and we're 80% done, it won't hold up anything. We could have a meeting very quickly and discuss some of these things. So I'm in favor of that meeting.
I'm in favor of that meeting. I hope everybody else is too. And thank you for that. And if you want to draw something to kind of show us, you know, sometime in the near future what you're talking about, I'd like to see it on paper.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
Okay, that completes our public discussion. Thank you all for being as brief as possible and not keeping the council too late tonight. Mr. Rose, you're next on the agenda.
Okay, I appreciate it, Mr. Mayor, and I normally don't say this, but I was very impressed by the comments and the thoughts of some of y'all here, and I'll give you some of the things that I do, and I'll show you some of the things I don't do. But in the 37 years I've been doing this, certain things we do. And some of those things I'd like to talk to you tonight. And to begin with, everyone should have a copy of the presentation. It's also right there on the screen. Happy to give you more copies if you'd like. Again, this is from my perspective, everybody's copy, so all means. What I'm going to try to do this evening, with your blessing, is go to page 1. Just start with globally, where is the town financially? Again, for those of you who understand, I've been fortunate to be your financial advisor for a long period of time. In fact, I financed the Coombs Center back in about 1990 or 92, so I remember that very well. And I remember when Mr. Coombs was around this proverbial table. I don't remember if the building was here back then per se, but I remember that. So having said that, I am not in any way, shape, or form elected, so I don't go for or against projects. That's not my job. My job is to try to give you some financial aspects of what it means to a town, good, bad, indifferent. Again, it's not my job to say it's a good or bad project, but rather elements of what it might mean to the town, again, within the realm of what we do. Having said that, I want to go over, if I could, your credit ratings, because from our perspective in all the years, your credit ratings are really a proxy for your financial well-being, and I think we'll go into that, and you'll see that in a few moments. The third thing I want to do is to, as I say here, reiterate the importance of sticking to your financial policy guideline for a certain amount of fund balance unassigned. It's the equivalent of a rainy day fund. If there are some folks may want to know, why don't we give every dollar back to the in effect to the taxpayer? I can go through that in some detail, but there's some good reasons for that. Number one being that if you have these funds and an emergency comes up, you don't have to go and borrow money. And you also have the way cash flows work for local governments. It's different than some of us for our own businesses that may perhaps be lucky that we get, for example, a paycheck that's the same every week or every month. Local governments, as Ms. Sullivan knows, Mr. Banner knows, is very uneven in terms of the way you get collections. So you need to have certain monies there that are available to help you in the short periods of time throughout the year. That's part of why you have a fund balance. So it is for operations as well. Lastly, it's for comfort to lenders, that when they're looking at making loans, whether it's the Carter Bank that one of the gentlemen alluded to and I'll talk about, or permanent financing, the old saying, cash is king. They like to know that you have some dollars in case something bad happens. And so that is also works to help you borrow more cost effectively. We'll talk a little bit about this capital project. Again, remember, I'm not in any way opining on the capital project, but I am talking about information that we've been given. I'll talk about where it stands, and you'll see it, because I'm going to compare it to information we were given that was estimates back in 2015. It's now middle of 2018, so you'll be able to see what has changed and what continues to happen, good or bad, from there. With all that said, let me just start to page 2, and I'll try to move fairly quickly. I'm happy to answer any questions along the way, but again, by all means, like I said, hopefully this will make some sense by the time I'm done. Whether it's good or bad, hopefully it'll make some sense though. So I mentioned a moment ago the credit rating or credit ratings. You have 2 of them. There are basically 3 national credit rating agencies. They're independent. They don't care where you're located. They review you, again, independently. And they have basically 4 different sectors, as I put here, in terms of their review. The economics, and you can see there what makes economics. It's about 30% of your review. Your financial performance, how you actually do, meaning do you or do you not have a structurally balanced budget? What I mean by that is, do recurring revenues take care of recurring expenses? That's also 30%. So those 2 there are 60% by both agencies. And then management, how you operate, the way in which you operate and do things. Do you have some long-range planning? Do you have budget practices and policies? That's anywhere from 20 to 30%. And interestingly enough, the last piece, the debt, for one of the agencies, Standard & Poor's, is only 10% of how they look at you overall. They're much more interested, Standard & Poor's, in your management, how you operate, versus just the sheer debt levels. That's interesting. And then Moody's looks at it at 20%. So the point here is, before you even get to how leveraged you are or not as a local government, there's upwards of 80 to 90% are caring about the things that you have some very good control over and some things you don't have as much control over, such as the overall economic base, because that's something they look at regionally, not just the town itself, and they think about that, and that's an important factor. So with that said, let's go to page 3, and I will tell you, on the left-hand side, those categories are not mine, meaning I didn't call that very strong or strong. That's the actual credit rating agencies. That's how they delineate, not David Rose or Davenport. So you are actually in that second tier, and you are in that very strong category. In one case, in Moody's, you're at the bottom of the very strong, and in Standard & Poor's, you're right in the middle of that very strong. I would contend that our goal over time is to move to AAA. Now, I will tell you, size of a local government, in part, factors in. There's not a lot of AAA local governments of this population. There are some, but they tend not to be too many. The reason for that, the theory is, by the rating agencies, right or wrong, is that there are just not as many people. If something happens, or you have some downturn, to spread, if you would, the overall cost of running the government over. Whether that's a real or not, some people might disagree. That's not me talking. That's me being, in effect, the messenger relaying that to you over time. Okay? So you're in a good state, and you're not as overly leveraged, perhaps, as some people might think. And the key is, on page 4 from Moody's, what could make that rating go up? And they say a significant tax base growth, and then enhancement of socioeconomic indicators. What could go down? I think the critical one you have totally in your control, which is deterioration of reserves and liquidity. I will tell you now, and you may know it, you have an unassigned fund balance policy that was passed by your previous council or councils, council previously, that said, and by our recommendation, that you would not go below $5 million of unassigned, and you're right in that range. And we'll find out through Chuck at the end of probably August, and then of course formally by the audit, which comes basically at the end of the year, calendar year, if you are right there, or right above it, right below it. But that range is what we want to make sure that you do. That's important. So that said, let's go to the next one, S&P. They give you, in the area of strong management, they say you have good financial policies and practices, so they like what you've got there. They think you have strong budgetary flexibility. And again, they look at some other factors. So what could make it go up, as you can see here, the economy, some better budgetary performance. Again, you're in very strong to begin with, but even more, in effect, year-end excess cash flow. That's what they mean really by budgetary performance. And then downside here, what could go down? Again, lower levels of reserves, fiscal pressure there. And so again, they're both pretty much similar rating agencies. All right, so just for everybody's benefit, how you finish the 2017 fiscal year. Now, you may say, why am I talking about 2017? We just finished 2018, because it takes, as you know, about 5 to 6 months to get your audit. So we wanted you to see what the audited results were for 2017. And so there you can see you had a positive financial result that was viewed favorably by the rating agencies. I told you the fund balance, $5 million, was really the minimum, and you were just basically about $75,000 off of that. Hopefully, we can move above that, and that's, again, important. Your enterprise fund, utility enterprise fund, continues to be self-supporting. That's important, and that, again, is set up in such a way that those folks that actually benefit from water and sewer or what have you in an enterprise fund, that's typically what we see in enterprise funds. Some places we see it in stormwater, some places we see it in airports, whatever the case may be. To the extent they're self-supporting, that again takes the pressure off your general fund. And the rating that you enjoy is basically based for your general fund. Again, 2018 year-end results are still unaudited, of course, and we expect them, as I said, in the next few weeks. It's very preliminary. So let me go on to the existing debt profile if I could. And go to page 8. This is your debt outstanding. It's about $10.5 million. And you'll notice since 2014, the town's paid off about $3.5 million. So one might say, are we paying our debts off quickly, slowly? So if you go to page 9, I think this will be helpful, at least hopefully helpful. You have what's called a payout ratio, everyone does, and we look at it after 10 years. That's the standard way to look at it. So what do I mean by that? What this shows is that after 10 years, you look at 2019, you will have paid off close to 95% of all of your debt, principal of your debt. Well, that's very, very strong. Let me give you a perspective. The average person who has a home, fortunate to have a home, let's think of it this way, that let's say is a $100,000 mortgage. After 10 years, is paid off about 25% of the principal. You in the town were closer to 95%. So you're in a very good position when it comes to your debt portfolio. Excellent position. Typically, if we have policies, we like to think about paying off debt between 50 and 60% after 10 years. So we're still a lot better than an individual in their borrowing. But again, we want to be in that mode because we view that a town or a city or county is always going to have future needs. Whether it's elective needs such as, let's say, a sports complex, or ones that you have no choice to do. Something that, again, EPA or something gives you, don't know what that is. We want to be in a position where we're paying our debts down quick enough so the next generation is not overly saddled. So hopefully that's a good perspective for you on your debt. Let's go to page 10. We've broken out that debt, but this here is your tax support. And you can see there, this is basically your non-utility side, and it's 100% after 10 years. So again, effectively, all your debt's paid in 10 years. Then you go to page 11, and what we wanted to show you with the dark green is that's your debt, but if you were to try to fill it up, if you would, how much decline do you have in any given year going forward? And you'll notice that if we use 2019 as our fiscal year, that's the year we're in right now, we just started that. Basically, in 2020, next fiscal year, when you have the staff start to put together the budget, your absolute debt, all things being equal, will be down about $115,000. So you'll have freed up some debt. The next couple of years, it's about the same, and then, of course, it gets larger as you continue. Now, that begs the question, what about this project? We'll get to that in a few moments. We'll talk about the project and how that gets layered into all of this. So just bear with me if you will. Okay, next thing we did, page 12 afterward, go to page 13, is a peer comparison. I've done this for you before. We change it over time, the different folks that we look at. But by and large, what we're trying to do, it's not an exact science, is to compare Abingdon with other towns throughout the Commonwealth that generally have similar ratings, if that's the case. In some cases they don't, or similar size, or relatively similar size. So it's not perfect, it's not exact, but the largest town, for example, is Leesburg. That population is upwards of 50,000. We don't put them in here. They may be AAA, and they're my client. I've been there working with them for 25 years, but they're not really as comparable to you just because of their population. That's what we could always add. But that said, it's not an exact science, but it's meant as a relative exercise. So if you go to page 14, we have tried to give you a sense of all of this. I will tell you, normally, because of where we're located, we put Blacksburg and Christiansburg in. But again, even Blacksburg at 43,000, and we work with both of them, they're on the high end, also highly rated. But again, I'm not sure they're really as comparable as here. Someone like Abington, we look to someone like a Smithfield, a South Boston, a Wytheville, again, more in your range of population. So you can see the population, the peer average, it's a little bit skewed by virtue of Blacksburg. So again, trying to get that. Then on page 15, we show the real estate tax rate. Now, that may not be fully fair because we didn't put in personal property. We could add that as well. But just wanted to show you, yes, Abington is on the high end, and it's up there with Pulaski and Blacksburg. So again, you can see that Vinton on the low end, but again, the average is still considerably lower than yours. I want you to see that. Our focus, again, is not to try to give you one view or another. I want to just give you what everything is looked at as the rating agencies look at this, okay? And their view, by the way, is that your relative tax rates, maybe they're high, maybe some folks don't like them. I'm not sure, I know a lot of people like paying taxes anywhere, but the point is, those taxes have provided the ability to have a structurally balanced budget. So that's the way they think of it. That's how they look at it, is that it provides a structurally balanced budget. So then you go to page 16, assessed value per capita. What do we mean by that? What we mean is, what is the total town's taxable value divided by the actual folks in town, the number of folks. And you can see the peer average is about 93,000. You're about 111,000. That's very good. When you're above 100,000, that is considered a very strong number nationally. And you're above the peer average here in Virginia. And you can see, for example, Percival, another client of ours, is at 145,000. That's right there in Loudoun County, which actually has, if not the top, one of the top 2 or 3 highest median household incomes in the country. So again, very rarefied air up there, but it's also a lot more expensive to live there. But just point that out. So get a sense of this. So they view you as a comfortably situated community when it comes to your values, wealth levels. All right, let's go to page 17. Now let's turn to your debt outstanding. This is the tax-supported component. Again, different pieces. You'll notice here that the peer group average is about 3 times what your level is. So you are very much in good stead there. You can see some of your other neighbors where they are. And again, even though Percival is very wealthy, for example, they happen to have a lot of debt because they do a lot of things and they've done a lot of things. So again, that's what their constituency expects. All right. Page 18, I think a little more helpful though. Even though folks at the rating agencies don't look at this ratio anymore, which is your debt per capita, I still think it would be helpful. And you can see here, Percival, by the way, is AAA, and they've got almost $2,600 of debt for every citizen. You, on the other hand, have, again, about half the average, a little less than half the average. The average is about 800, you're about 400. So you see where you're positioned right now before taking on any additional debt. And I'd add, the way the rating agencies would look at this, we don't count interim debt, which is your line of credit, as permanent debt. That's not counted by any of these. So some of these other folks actually have some interim debt. The reason for that, right or wrong, is in some cases, other dollars will take it out. In some cases, they'll borrow for it. But it's not a given that every community that does interim financing is going to go out and permanently finance it. So that's why it's done that way. So it's not as if we forgot about the 10 million. It's just not yet factored in purposely. So then we said, fine, let's look at your debt versus the assessed values. Another way to look at how the town is set up. And you can see here, you are basically at or below everyone else. So again, a very strong position to start looking at taking on what ultimately will be the $10 million. You're in a very strong position. Then let's look at page 20. I think this is really very helpful. What this is your credit card, tax-supported debt service versus expenditures. What it's saying is, for every dollar of your budget expenditures, how many pennies on the dollar is going to debt service? And for you, I'm gonna round off, it's basically 5 cents on the dollar. That's what it's saying. It's 5 cents on the dollar, and it will be declining. The average is basically about 7.5 cents. We have recommended policies that you don't go beyond 10 to 12%. Towns sometimes will go up to 15% because, again, it's just a little bit different. Towns don't have schools and things of that nature. So that's what we typically will say, to keep it within a 10 to 15% level, and you're basically at a third of that level right now, in that sense. Okay. Then let's go to fund balances. Everybody calculates them a little differently, which is why we put in some asterisks. But I think what's important is a comparative. Marion, Virginia, we didn't forget that. When we did these, they actually, and we work with them now, they had no fund balance, and they were working and have worked successfully to build their fund balance back. So I think that's no longer really accurate, but we do this in a moment in time, so that's why. But they've done a very good job of building that back up. Again, when you look at someone like Blacksburg, you're much larger. As a result, they have a 15%. That's a very good number. It's a good large number. They're in very solid shape. For you, you are, by this ratio, almost 40%. And again, you're in very, very good stead compared to your peers. And that Christiansburg is not a typo. They really have a very strong level. One can argue perhaps they don't need that much. That's for their decision. But again, you can see the relative sizes, and you're very much in par with everybody else. So with that said, I wanted to leave with you, before we get to the Meadows, the notion here that I'm not for or against borrowing $10 million. That's not what I'm about to do. But what I am saying is you are starting from a position that's a solid one by the sheer numbers, by the sheer ratings, by the comparatives. And I would add that Virginia is fortunate because, for example, when it comes to things like your pensions and meeting pension obligations, a lot of other communities outside of Virginia struggle with that. Those don't come through on some of those ratios. You here are under VRS, so it's actually basically done for you, if you would, statewide. There's a few exceptions, but by and large. So one of the biggest drivers that worries economists, worries rating agencies for other states and local governments is making sure your pensions are there. That's not a worry that we basically have in Virginia, and we don't have that worry for you here in Abington because you have consistently been making your payments that are necessary to stay in good stead with your pensions. So that's a big driver, and that's why we bring it up. But I just want, don't even show it. We don't need to. You don't dictate that, the state does. So, okay. So let's talk about the Meadows. I know I'm taking a little longer, I apologize, but.
You take your time, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure, so thank you. So basically the background is back sometime in 2015, we basically made a presentation based upon information that was provided to us in meeting with your Old Town staff, with Food City representatives, and we were given a series of assumptions. And so based upon those assumptions, we being those folks that are typically in dark suits, today I'm not, summertime. Thomas Malthus once said, that's why, we're the dismal science, economics, and that's why I thought we always wear dark suits, So, if you let me back in a couple months, I'll wear a dark suit again. But having said that, We also, when we're given numbers, don't necessarily buy into the projections that are provided, but we don't do the projections, and that's important. But what we're able to do tonight is to basically give you a status report based upon those projections and where you are, or where they are today, I should say, with regard to those, and I'll give that in a few moments. So go to page 23. One of the recommendations that we made to the last council was that if you want to move forward, and they did, rather than go immediately to permanent financing, even though interest rates were very favorable, because there was no revenues coming in to offset that at the time, because it's going to take a couple of years plus to build a project, we recommended that we go instead and do a line of credit. And we did it competitively, and Carter Bank and Trust was the winning bidder. They provided us what's called a drawdown line of credit. It's a nice fancy way of saying that we only pay on the money we draw down. So we're not paying some percentage of $10 million no matter what. Second thing is, they agreed that this line of credit, which would last for several years, no matter what happens with interest rates, we are going to pay, as we draw it down, 1.4%. So irrespective, even though rates in the short term have gone up about 1% since a year ago, if we were to argue and say, draw down another $1 million tomorrow, we pay 1.4% on that money, just like we're paying 1.4% on the money we've already drawn down. That we thought was a very, very good deal. The other thing we liked about it is that the bank will not charge us if we end up, for whatever reason, stopping tomorrow. And we have, let's say, $3 million outstanding, and we don't use the other 7, there's no penalty to not using the other 7. They don't have a back-end payment that we have to meet. There's none of that. In addition, we can prepay it at any time without penalty. So we felt like we have the best of both worlds here. Because if somehow, at the time, the project got delayed, and nothing got drawn down, and whatever reason, we didn't want to be having the clock tick and start paying a bunch of money on $10 million. So that's why, when all is said and done, we recommended it. I think it was unanimous. I don't really remember exactly, but I think a lot of folks felt pretty good about this particular line of credit, and we still do. Having said that, it matures on July 13th of 2021. So here we are essentially right past July 13th of 2018. So we have 3 more years if we do nothing else. And we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. So what it can be used for, you can see there, it's pretty broad. It's purposely broad. It was made so that if some other things come into the fold, you can use it if you so desire. Okay. So let's go to page 24. And you'll notice here, this page is identical, that's why we said it, to the assumptions that we gave, or were given, we were given, and we turned over and showed to y'all on sometime in 2015. You'll notice here, the project's been broken out into 2 major mixes, retail and then the out parcel. One of the gentlemen asked, what about the loss, for example, of something going to another? Well, we don't calculate that, but what I do know is that in the retail mix, every one of these properties, with one exception, is not going to be, I'll tell you why I say that, we'll learn this, is a new business that is not here in the town. So it's not as if one is going to move from one part of town to another or cannibalize that. Second, though, I said with one exception, and that is, I'm not sure if it's public or not, I think it is, but there's one business that is going to open a second unit. It's a credit union, as I understand it. So that's what we understand. Yeah, that's at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I've also found is there is now definitive documentation and moving forward. And they estimated at the time, I'm gonna round off here, 90,000 square feet on all of that. And they are today 90%, over 90% set on all of that retail mix. So I think the number we were told was something close to 87,000, which is a lot more than 90%. But the point is, it has come to fruition. And on the next page, you can see a little bit of a timetable of what's gonna happen. So jump ahead for a moment. There's been no material changes since the 2015 assumptions. The second point is, as y'all know, Tom, grading is underway. Vertical construction is supposed to start, is expected to start this September. Yes, ma'am.
Madam,
Yeah.
it's an interjected question here. Could you explain a little bit more in depth to us and the public what no material changes means from the 2015 assumptions?
Yes. So they assume, go back to page 24. Good. That there would be, I'm gonna round off again, square footage, about 90,000 square feet of new. And they're basically, right now, seeing that that same thing that they have is about 87,000 some odd square feet. So it's literally close to 97, 98% on track of what they estimated. That's very good. And I will put that commentary in as an outsider. That's very good.
Would you answer a question for me?
Of course.
David?
Yes, sir.
I don't see the credit union in here. Is that because it's not, oh, that's an outparcel, okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No.
Well, it's not in there either.
No, I think what it is, and I don't know this for a fact, but it may fall under the miscellaneous office uses. So,
Under
again, I may
retail.
not be exactly right about it, but what I care about, for your benefit, yes, sir,
Could I ask a question on page 24?
yes.
The junior, just as an example, the Junior Anchor Auto, that's a brand-new auto store in town, I understand that. Nobody else that's here moving.
That's what we were told.
I think we have 6 or 7 automotive stores.
So let me answer, that's a great question. So what they've told us is that the actual mix of this is not identical to that. So for example, there may not even be an auto into the retail mix. There may not be. Okay, does that make sense?
Well, I guess my question was,
Yes, sir.
if there had been
Mhm.
an auto, is the assumption that all of these sales are extra spark plugs being sold and none of the other, it's not robbing business from any of the others?
So you asked.
And if it's not an auto, you know, we have the sporting good, we have 3 sporting goods stores, we got a
Again,
nail plate.
What they told us was they have signed up the equivalent, like I said, of almost the identical amount of square footage.
Right.
And while some of the little acreage may change and some of the exact types of entities have changed, they gave us the sense that the annual sales were still very much in line. Now, what I have done is to take those annual sales, you'll see, and discount them and ask the question, which we'll get to, what could be a cash flowing of the town? Because as you said earlier, somebody said earlier, the idea is there could be some dissipating of other revenues because, again, you're gonna eat so many meals and all those things that you're talking about. We understand that. Their sense is that this is going to be, to a large extent, accretive. My sense is, may or may not be. I'm not representing them. That's not my job.
So
My
you
job.
did discount for
You'll
lost
see that in a
business
minute.
elsewhere.
You're gonna see that in a minute. We're not there yet. So that's the first part. So the retail is, from a comfort standpoint that I take, they're very much on target when you're at 97, 98% of signed up retail. That number, considering it's 3 years later, 3 years later. Now, the out parcel unit mix has more ways to go, but we've been told that is moving along in a good way. So, having said that, I mentioned a few moments ago, and I'm jumping around purposely, that we have the ability to prepay this interim when moved to a permanent financing. Having said that, we know interest rates are rising, still very solid, but my recommendation to you as a town, it's only a recommendation, is that until we get more certainty with the second part of the project, the out parcels, I'll talk about the time frame, we don't go into and convert to permanent financing. Because what I want to do is to have better certainty of all of this mix, if you would, and when things are coming online. So that we then can do what I think everybody wants, is to have a sense of, okay, will there indeed be, just go with me, annual sales closer to 57 million, or is it closer to 27 million? That's the kind of thing we want to have a sense of. So we'll talk about that in a minute, have a look at that, okay? So, current status, as I said, what they're expecting is the completion of the shopping center, as they said, would be spring of 19, next spring. And the out parcel completion, they see that slated for the summer of 2020. So what that means, working backwards, is they really see having a very good handle on the out parcel projects and what they are and who they are, basically a year from now, if not a little sooner, next summer. So that the idea then is the shopping center is really already virtually either up and running or close to it, and the out parcel is already known and they're working on that, yes.
Can you answer this question possibly? The parcels that are sold, or can you tell me if this is for the end user, or is this from, are they investors that invested in this property? Do you know the answers to those questions, to that question?
I don't know every answer, no. What I think they have given me the sense of, when we talked to them, was these parcels we're talking about are the end users. This is that they have signed up with the end users. If I'm wrong, I would suggest, and I could be, that you bring the folks in from Food City, they've been here before, have them come in again. They can listen to what I'm saying, they can see what I'm saying and say, no, Mr. Rose is a little off on that one, there's a combination or something, and that's fine. Because if that's the case, I want to know just as much as you do. Because again, I'm not recommending that we jump into permanent financing until we have better certainty on the whole project.
Yeah, I agree with you on
So
that.
that's how I look at it.
The other thing that I was told, and I'm pretty sure I can say this out in public, but I was told, and I don't know if you know this, but one of the tenants will not be there. They pulled out.
No, I don't
So,
know.
and I don't know why that there's only, like, as far as my knowledge serves me, there's only one deed recorded, so I don't know if these deeds are held, or is it because of proprietary information?
I don't pretend to know.
I'd
That's,
like
I
to know
don't.
a little bit more.
Like I said,
about
I will
that.
tell you, my discussions with them were as late as, today is Thursday, keeping track, was as late as Monday. So if something's pulled out, or something happened adversely, it was basically, less than 72 hours ago. That was like 48 hours ago.
This was back in, I was told back in, let's see, July
Oh, no, no,
21st.
So I suspect probably what happened, I'm just gonna guess here, I shouldn't, but I will. They probably have had to change, if it's on the retail side, clearly they've had to change, and like I said, it may not be an auto parts, maybe something else. But if it's on the out parcels, that's why the out parcels could be there,
It was
are still
retail.
not there.
It was retail.
Okay, well, retail, they've clearly gotten something else in there. Or like you said, is it an end user? They made me sense, they're talking about end users, we can find that out. I wanna know just as well as you do. Okay, so if we go to page 26, this is also what we presented in 2015, the numbers. So you'll notice, I'm not sure the right-hand side is as dark as I'd like, so, but hopefully it will show you. So we said back then, Food City was gonna purchase and grade 70 acres, that's been done, we understand. Approximately 30 would be retained by Food City, they're on target for that. Remaining 40 would be conveyed to the town, the sports complex, that, as we understand it, has been done. And then the town being responsible for, as you can see there, 50% of road improvements, construction, estimates, again, those are not my estimates, those are estimates provided to us. We've been told those are still on target, and we specifically asked about both. We talked about road improvements the other day, and they said, no, that's still very much on target. I said, fine, again, gotta take them on their word, but again, Mr. Sullivan, you know better than I do.
Not really.
Okay.
but We're learning.
We're learning, so
I
that's
believe,
fine.
I believe, Matt, we are on target cost-wise.
That's what I've heard.
So I think everything right now is still projected
Okay.
as you have it depicted.
So.
And can I say one
Of
more
course,
thing?
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's why we're here.
When we go back and we're gonna say they, I just wanna make it clear to the public that they provided, they meaning Marathon Realty or Food City provided these figures for us
Yes, ma'am.
and for you. And they are providing, meaning the same, Food City.
Right, and I think that's why one of the gentlemen said, I don't say that I'm doing the feasibility study for that, that's correct. We're not in the feasibility study business, but we do understand how to think of life cycle costs and all of that, so we'll get to that in a moment, we'll get to that, that's
Do you happen to know if the town council ever established, previous town council, ever established a budget for this $10 million, how that's to be spent? Was there an official budget set up?
I don't know. I mean, there were so many dollars and numbers thrown around at some point that we just, again, in our world, we simply, because we're not in the construction business, we said, you give us a number that you're comfortable with, that you can live with, and we'll use that for our analyses, and that's how we got it. But there were so many different meetings and discussions over a period of time that it just seemed to be all over the map. I'm just going from memory.
I can speak a little bit to that. We know that the budget for the road is $5 million. It's a 50% match project, so we're at $2.5 million. So when Matt and I worked on on those capital projects for the budget, we knew what he had spent, and then Matt anticipated what was to be spent for the remaining part of that project. So we've not exceeded that 2.5 million that we're gonna be spending. Part of it's VDOT, we get the 50% reimbursed, the other 2.5 we're responsible for. There's been, Matt also at that same time, we worked together on projecting what was to be spent for the field construction on the recreational component of it. And he had an idea of what he would have to have as far as design, all those different types of expenses that it was incurred, and how much he would be spending during this fiscal year, and that's what's currently in the FY19 budget. So that, that's kind of a breakdown of where the 10 million's at.
And if I can add, it's important to note that we have not gone to bid for construction of the field project. So here again, this is a speculative number, which more than likely will come in lower than what it's budgeted based upon previous bid histories.
Okay? So let's go now to page 27. And in working with not only Food City, but also working with the county treasurer, who we know well and enjoy a very good relationship with, are able to understand how certain of these taxes will be impacting the overall cash flows. So we assume these three different levels, and that is real estate would stay at 28 cents, meals tax at 7, and lodging tax at 7, okay? Now, it's an important point there. We say additional revenue may be generated from sales tax, personal property tax, people taxes. Sales taxes are shared with the county and other towns, and they're less significant, of course. But we're not trying to count everything. That's not what the goal was. This goal was to get a general overall sense of relative revenues versus relative cash out on the 10 million. So you'll see that in a few moments, okay? This is basically on page 28. As we say, the amount of net new revenues is difficult to project. There's elements of absorption, other projects, depending on exactly the nature of what some of those new businesses are. There may not be a net loss to others. And since we don't know what those are, and we will not know those for a period of time, you really cannot run that type of analysis that's been asked for. But what we can do is to say to ourselves, fine, these projects and their general numbers that they've given us are supposed to produce a certain amount of overall sales, of overall taxes, revenues, I should say, excuse me, which I said was around $57 million. The nature of that, when we did the modeling, we then did three things. We said, let's assume first, here in the middle, that we go exactly with what they say, they meaning what their estimates are. That at full build out, 100% of the revenues, let's see what that means. We then discounted that and said, what if you get 75% of the revenues? And then we further discounted it and said, what if you get 50 cents or 50% of the revenues permanently? So we do that because then the issue is, there's going to be, again, some potential net loss, and there's also going to be operational costs. In our projects, just like we did the Coombs Center back in 90, 91, 92, we borrowed the money, I think it was about $3 million back then, but don't hold me to it, a long time ago. Again, the town, as part of its job, figured out what the operational cost would be, and it's embedded into, whether it's $1 million, whatever that number is, it's embedded into y'all's budget. So we understand the same thing has to happen here. That's really, again, out of our purview, but we know it's real. So let's go to page 29. And what we did was to say, let's set up some cases for the express purpose of seeing when and what burden this might put on the town's general fund, depending upon how those revenues really shake out. So like I said, the three cases are the 100, 75, and 50. And you'll notice here, the financing date, that's gonna move, of course. We purposely kept it the same, as if it were July of 2018. Again, what really matters here is not that date, it's what happens over time. So you'll see that's right, it's all relative. But we used an interest rate of 4.25% fixed for 20 years. I'll just give you a perspective. Right now, we're doing financings of 20 years. That rate is closer to 3.25. So again, that will further help us. But since I'm not recommending that you move into permanent financing right now, that rate could go to 5.25 a year from now or so. Hard to say. I'm not an economist, even if I was, nobody really knows. But having said that, was that?
That's a true statement.
You're not saying much for economists.
Well, I'm not an economist. I'm saying I'm not an economist. I'm not. You know, they're great at their hindsight's 20/20. I'll tell you exactly. But having said that, in fairness, we try to build in some cushion, and that cushion may not be enough, but at least, again, it's a relative order of magnitude. And then the other thing we said is we're gonna amortize all this over 20 years. Is that magic? No. Is that a good way to do it? Maybe, maybe not. But again, if we moved it out to 25 years, cash flows look a little better. If we moved to 15 years, they look a little worse. The point is, 20 years is considered typically a pretty standard time frame to do these things. So let's go to page 30. And this is what we wanted you to see. We borrowed $10 million. We assume, by the way, that the growth of those revenues is 1% a year. So it's less than the growth of inflation, which has basically been a solid 2% plus. And we keep it that way. On top of that, you can see the revenues. You can see our debt service is level after basically first couple of years. We ramp it up because of construction. And once you see that's done, we have basically the dark brown is the debt service line, the dark green is the revenues, and so the excess revenues in any given year when you have build out, like 2021, is in $700,000 a year. So we know that operations will take some of that, some of the net loss will take some of that, but again, it's not gonna take $700,000 a year. We understand that. And if it does, the asset here has got some things. And one thing I learned a little about this project, and you all know better than I do, and that is if indeed you have this sports complex, you are now a net attraction to outside entities coming in, what have you. Whether that's real or not, other places have seen that, I understand that, we've looked at some other places that see that. So let's go to page 31. It's rare, by the way, that I've ever seen projections to be right there at the 100%. So then we said, fine, let's cut it down immediately to 75%. And you can still see there's a very nice margin of comfort, if you would. Now, if rates go up, interest rates go up a little higher, that margin of comfort will come down a little bit, no doubt. But at the same time, and I'll give you a sense of that, if rates go up 1%, simple way to think about it, 1% on $10 million is about $100,000. So instead of being $350,000 cushion, it might go to $250,000 cushion. If we were to go to the marketplace today, though, that $350,000 cushion goes to $450,000. So again, it's all an order of magnitude. No crystal ball right now. So then we said, fine, let's go to 50%. That's pretty draconian, I will tell you. That is pretty draconian.
Just out of curiosity, what is the average? I mean, is there a standard average predicted?
Not that I know of, no. I mean, every project's different. You know, I can remember once doing the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, and they made some projections, and people thought that was gonna be a bust, and it turned out to be wildly under. You know, so, you know, I would
Still
never,
not.
you know, no, it got attractive. They even get people coming in the dead of winter there. I wouldn't want to go to Cleveland in the dead of winter, it's not my world. But it is, you know, let alone Cleveland to begin with. But, you know, I mean, that's just, but it is, okay? And then you have things like the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte. We work in Charlotte. We didn't work on that project, but we work in Charlotte. And that hasn't had as many people. A lot of people thought that would be like Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It just hasn't for whatever reason. So who knows? There's no right, there's no absolutes. Can't figure it out. So this, I thought, was more telling though. And that is that if we go to half of the revenues, which again would be very draconian now, and that's assuming, again, growth is only at 1%, you have the ability to do some things. You're basically about to break even. That's what this really says. Again, this is built in, that interest rate, so really, at 50% right now, you basically have a solid cushion of about $100,000. So its operations could easily suck that up. Depending upon what new businesses come in, that could really not be $100,000. But from our perspective, if it really looked like this was the case, and I don't think it is, but again, I'm not the economist, we might want to say, fine, do we want to do something that's more out in 22, 25 years as opposed to 20 years? Especially recognizing that the sports complex is not going to be over in 20 years. Hopefully it's going to be a lot longer than that. It'll take improvements and it'll take upgrades down the road. But as I said, when you look at your overall debt, remember, this doesn't factor in the concept that your overall debt in 10 years from now is all paid off. So if this sports complex is a very large component, even if there was not these offsetting revenues by virtue of that, you're still going to be in a very good position in a decade, if not even sooner, because if you go way back, as I said, within a couple, 3 years, your debt service drops down by, I think I used the term 115,000, then it grows to about 250,000, then you're like 300,000. So again, from a quote-unquote risk standpoint, you're pretty well positioned. Now, having said that, if all of a sudden Tony says to me, David, we've got to talk about another unrelated project that has no revenues coming in, that's going to be $10 million, then what I'm telling you here, we won't have that cushion. We won't have that. But right now, I'm not aware of a project of that nature. Not aware of it. But it could. So we know that. So that's really what I see here. Page 33, just some observations. I think is what I've really been saying. What we would recommend is we be vigilant about understanding what the mix of the project is, the timing of the project is, as one of the councilwomen said here, whether those are end users or flippers in terms of investments, Let's understand those, then let's see those things start to come out of the ground, and therefore, we then can figure, based upon all of that, the better handle. I'm thinking that handle will be about a year from now, a little less, but about a year from now, we could be in a mode where I would recommend with your staff, if they do, that we convert into the permanent financing and structure in such a way. And we'll know again, if this new council has other capital projects I'm not aware of that we haven't factored in, and when, and those things. So that's my presentation. I hope, Mr. Mayor, it took a long time, but.
Oh, it's fine. We need to hear about it.
That's very encouraging.
Oh, Mr. President, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
First, if I understood your last presentation, when you gave it to council, we can issue up to $12 million in bonds, is that correct? Do we have an okay to do that, or are we limited to 10 million?
Oh, you mean in terms of your legal margin, or are you talking about just the old resolution?
Well, if we did a new resolution, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Can we, is our rating good? I mean,
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's not an absolute. When we met with the rating agencies, we gave them a sense that our project was going to be probably around, I think the number we gave them then was around $12 million. I think we gave them a sense of where they were.
Okay,
That's
perfect.
yeah. But it's not a formula, it's not an absolute where, go with me. Even though, again, what you said, Tony, if all of a sudden they turn around and the project goes to 13 million and you said yes, they turn around and say, oh, you told us 12. You know, it's an order of magnitude. They don't look at it that way. Yeah.
And the other thing, when we look at this chart, the FY year numbers.
Which chart?
They start when we sell the bonds, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so exactly. That's why I'm saying.
That's gonna
we're not-
slide.
That's gonna slide. I could have cleaned it up and shown it
No,
2 years
no,
from
it's
now,
fine.
but
I
it's.
just want to make
it's
sure I
right.
understood.
Yeah, we purposely kept it.
The other question is, I didn't understand the July 2021 date. Is that when we have to sell the bonds by that date?
Yeah, well, yes, or to roll, as we'll call it, meaning extend the line
Okay,
of
so
credit.
our line of
Yeah.
credit expires.
That's right, that's right. So we've got 3 years, that's a lifetime in terms of worrying about that.
And the other thing that really concerns me early on in the project is we're losing a Hampton Inn, we're losing a medical building, we're losing Long John Silver's, we're losing Pizza Hut
Right.
and a convenience store.
That
And I think that's probably gonna, some of that revenue we'll lose beginning in the first of the year.
I think there's good, where are they, Matt? I think
They're in the right-of-way
requiring-
acquisition phase right now.
They're requiring that.
So that could be.
Could you repeat that? I didn't hear you.
VDOT's in the right-of-way acquisition phase right now. So there's a lot of give and take in right-of-way, but I think 4 to 6 months, they'll start taking possession of some of those properties.
So when we're figuring all of this out, we need to take that, that's not in your figures.
No, not at all, but, you know, I stay at the Hampton Inn, you know, so I know, I'll make sure I take all my stuff out of there. Sometimes forget stuff.
They might carry you out.
There's a backside to that exit 17 project, which, when they add in the additional road, all of a sudden they're gonna create, a world of marketable properties, to that. So there is, you know, as we get to, what was the year, 2024, I think, when should all that be finished? When did they tell us?
Well, I'm hoping 2023.
23? So by that point, we'll have marketable lots, that will create additional commercial space.
That's in the county, isn't it, man?
No,
Oh, it's not?
it's all in the town.
On 17, it's county.
Oh, no.
19 it's county, 17 it's county.
That'll generate tax revenue in 24, 25, 26.
Matt, there's no boundary in right those apartments?
You're both correct. I mean, some of those,
As part of that is.
yeah, some of that road that Mr. Stone's talking about is in the county, but some of it's in the town.
Oh, okay. Some of it's in the town.
Yeah, we're gonna have I guess it would be the eastern part of the back road.
Yes.
Would all be in the town, and the western piece of that same road would be county parcels, or at least.
So it's right on the line.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We're probably looking at 7+ years before we get anything further with taxes on that property.
Okay.
And we of course don't factor, again, we haven't factored any of that in, but I think y'all make a good point, and that is, maybe it's next year, and Chuck, you know about this, of course, there will be some of that loss of that revenue, so again, I can, you know, I see that, you know, there's no doubt.
As a side note, isn't Hampton Inn thinking about rebuilding their hotel on the other side of the interstate?
Well, as I understood it, I don't know if I'm right about this, it's hearsay, I guess, but I understood they were looking at the Magic North property, but we can't get that connector, so I don't know if that's a handicap to them or not.
True.
You know, one thing I will say about that property, just personally, I stay there so often, and I come out to Southwest Virginia, which I do a lot. They actually, at one point, they wanted to expand on that property before all this. That's such a popular place. I think the talk perhaps is, this is just me hearing from talking to the staff, that if they do go somewhere else in the town, they want to make it a bigger Hampton Inn, because it's been so popular, which is interesting. So I don't know if maybe I'm happy to answer any questions, or what's your pleasure, Mr. Mayor? Like I said, I'll help anybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reddick. We certainly appreciate your presentation. You did a very nice job.
Thank you.
Rick, you came in, and you missed the public discussion and the public comments. Are you here?
No, I'm here for the next one.
Something later on the agenda. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again. The next item on the agenda is discussion regarding the Freedom of Information Act fee schedule. Floyd Barrett.
Does everybody have one of these? Or not?
Should I go ahead or wait on you?
Yeah, go ahead.
You should have before you the recommended fee schedule. There's been a couple of additions, informational and procedural, added since we talked about it last. If you'll note, in the text, I'll just read it out loud for everyone in the room. And by the way, here, you guys can have one. Yeah, pass those around. Let them brought extra. The town of Abingdon, Virginia will respond to all requests for public records in compliance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, section 2.2, 3700, through 2.2-3714 in the Code of Virginia. And following this procedure, under FOIA laws, the town may charge a requester a reasonable amount for time spent in accessing, duplicating, searching, and providing any requested records. These charges may not exceed actual costs of the town. It is the desire of the government to provide information free of charge. With this in mind, the person may make 5 FOIA requests per year and receive their documents electronically, free of charge. Redactions and discretions will be taken as required by the Code of Virginia, and the Commonwealth of Virginia FOIA Council and/or the town attorney will be addressed for any questions. If the requester exceeds the 5 or requires that the documents be printed, the following charges will apply. Requests over the first 5 per year for Virginia residents will be $15 per, charged at a rate of $15 per hour for the collection and handling of the documents with a 1-hour minimum. All requests for printed documents will be charged at a rate of 10 cents per page per side for printing, and the $15 per hour for document handling and preparation. All the requests from outside vendor for business purposes will be charged at the town's actual cost, and that's based on the person doing the handling of the documents and their salary and such. A large paper request in excess of $200 would require a 50% deposit, which is in keeping with the FOIA regulations. Labor and printing charges based on $15 per hour and 10 cents per page per side would still apply. The Abingdon Police Department has a fixed rate of $6 for the first report in a request and 10 cents per page per side for printing, and a $15 per hour charge for document handling and preparation. So that's what I'm proposing. I'm open to suggestions, questions.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you be a little bit more, I guess, just give us a little bit more information about all requests from outside vendor for business purpose? Could you be a little bit more, go into that, just a little expand on
Sure.
that a little?
Be glad to. We do receive requests from marketing companies. A lot of times what they're looking for are information about our email addresses. They want to have information about billing. They want to have information that they can turn around and produce a document that they can then sell to other companies. So it's for the purpose of making money. They get it from us for free and they sell it to others at a premium. So with that being the case, they should pay. They should pay for the information they're getting for the purpose of making money. That's what they do. And the FOIA regulation does allow for that charge.
Floyd, what's your advice about the press? They keep complaining about our what goes on up here, or they have in the past. I guess they're happier the way things have been handled now. But do we need any sort of special rate for them? It's public, they claim their benefit the public.
They claim an exemption, actually. They try to claim an exemption.
Yeah.
The exemption doesn't actually, is not spelled out in the law. They just want to claim it. But the reality is, we want to maintain a very good relationship with the press.
Right.
They do us a big favor, and they can also do us a great harm. We want them to do us the most favors as possible, but we want them to have true and accurate information. Mr. Walters has met with Mr. Sullivan. He's met with me. We have handed out the olive branch of the information is here, and we will give it to you. As far as I'm concerned, we consider them to be a part of this community. We treat them just like any other person. If they request more than 5, we start charging them. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Where did the $15 an hour come from?
$15 an hour is a base salary for an employee of the town. I don't know of anybody in a position, a clerical position, who would make less.
These are employees that are paid from tax money?
Yes.
And so, in essence, if someone requests a document and is charged $15 an hour, he is paid twice?
No.
If he lives in the town of Abingdon?
Okay.
I'm not fond of that.
I understand. I do understand. However, I look at it from this perspective. And again, I'm for keeping freedom of information free. That's the reason you get the 5 free, as much as humanly possible. But I also understand that sometimes if I'm taking someone away from the job that the taxpayers as a body pay them to perform, and I'm saying, no, you work for me, because I want your time today to get this information. And I don't care what the rest of the taxpayers have to say about it. I want your information. I want your time. Well, I should pay something for that. And that way, I think it's more fair to the body of residents that, I could monopolize a lot of people in this town and go around and hand out FOIA requests all day. And then it's like, oh, but they're free and you have to do it. So I'm more than willing to try to help somebody that wants as much information as we can possibly give them. But if they get a little excessive, then there needs to be a premium on the fact, the realization that I am taking somebody away from their real job in order to serve me personally for information I'm seeking.
And keep in mind, we are following the exact guidance that's put out by the FOIA Council under the FOIA regulations as recommended. And this was written with those very issues in mind. And that's why there is a mechanism that allows the local body to charge. Quite honestly, our charges, that $15 is about the lowest rate we're gonna find. I don't think we have, I don't think we have any administrative clerical people in this town that work for $15 an hour. So we're basically giving them the lawnmower rate to do that. However, let's fall back on the previous line. If it's electronic, first 5 is nothing. So there's what, and then we do have to, I sent you the information a couple months ago about the difference between Dillon rule and home rule, and I hope you did have time to read that. We do have to remember we're a Dillon rule state. This is the standard that the state has set, and while we have a little variance within that standard, leaning too far from one side to the other puts us in danger of violating the Dillon.
Okay, Count, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, Floyd and I have talked a few times. I've got a few comments. One is the 15.
Joe, it's getting late.
Well, real quick,
Can you make those comments at the regular meeting in the public comment session?
I can, it had to do with this project.
Can you be pretty brief?
I can be very brief.
In case we need to adjust. Yeah, Mr. Lyon, could you step up so we get?
Yeah, I can be real brief. The $15, I think that's fair and equitable and a good deal. The one I wanted to point out, redactions and discretions will be taken as required by the Code of Virginia. I think that's great, because it could have said as authorized or allowed, which would have been bad. But the thing that I bring to the council's attention is if a redaction or discretion is taken and the person who's put in the Freedom of Information request has a issue that they don't agree with the FOIA officer, I believe there should be a way to come back to the council for it or to resolve it. There was one that the newspaper put in was, is there a way to appeal? There should be an appeal process over and above the FOIA officer.
There actually is, and it's written into the state code, and it's filing with the local court, and that's how the code, that's how the FOIA law is written, and I discussed that very issue with the lawyer at the FOIA council in regards to that question, local governments over what we release or what redactions we choose to take, and I was specifically told at that point, if you put something in, you're really close to violating the Dillon rule. Because the state code, when it was enacted, the spirit of that code was for that to be decided in a court, not by a local governing body. And so that's why it's.
So go to court if you have a question.
Well, it's go to court to file the claim so it can be heard before a judge. So the judge can make that decision. Here again, we're.
Do you know if it's district or circuit?
I'm sorry?
Do you know if it's district court or circuit court?
I don't. I mean, I imagine the person would be general district court.
It'd be district court.
Yeah, it'd be general district court.
Yeah.
But that was.
That's pretty standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
FOIA across the country.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
standard.
and it is a standard across the state because that's what the state code dictates.
Okay, all we're doing tonight is deciding whether to place the fee schedule on the agenda for the August meeting. Are you all ready to vote on the fee schedule at the August meeting?
Yes.
Everybody? Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion regarding College and Church Street one-way option.
I'll defer to Mr. Bullock, but we'll add that this issue has been raised, I don't know, it comes up and goes, and comes up and goes. I think Mr. Bradley may have danced this a time or two. I will speak to this from a law enforcement perspective. You know, I've contended for 16 years now that we need to figure something out. I think the option that is presented is very workable. There are some things that do concern me, and Mr. Rose is in the room, and I'll state out front, one of the things that concerns me, Mr. Rose, is how we're gonna get your buses in and out of your parking lot, making a left turn out of there.
Actually, we designed that to be able to do that when we designed it originally.
Okay, because, you know, if we have them.
They actually can make that turn.
Okay, that was one of my big pieces when we came up with this design.
Are we talking about Partington Place or Park Street?
Yeah, he would.
Park Street coming out of the thing at Park Street. But we actually considered that when we designed that originally.
So you would be able to come out of your lot with
This is absolutely true.
Okay.
I will say up front, we've wanted to do this since I got here. Because it forces people to go to the lights to make turns on Main Street rather than the dangerous situations we have now. I couldn't be more for this.
Well, and you know, and one of the worst spots that we do have is that intersection at Partington, because currently it's
Absolutely.
two-way, and it's right there by the crosswalk, and people come out there trying to make a left turn. So I'll shut up though, and I'll defer to Mr. Bolt.
Well, it's an excellent point. I know historically this topic seems to come to the top of the cooking list about every 5 years, and it gets to a certain point, then the interest kind of peters out, and it goes away, and 5 years later, it comes back up again. You know, we were looking at trying to provide a safer traffic pattern, trying to keep the same amount of parking and it hopefully increase, and help bar patrons in particular with some unloading and loading zones. That is, from my experience, a big problem. A lot of the tour buses park on College Street, which is two-way. They block a lane of traffic, so you pull out to Main Street, you can't see, or you pull in and there's a bus there, and you gotta go into the other lane of traffic, there's a car coming. Lots of issues there with the loading, unloading on College Streets. We tried to, I do want to say this is just our suggestion. This has not been really vetted by any means. It's a starting point for discussion. I am certainly open to any suggestions or any direction from the council about how you want to move forward with this. But we think that between traffic safety, looking at some parking issues, and unloading and loading zones, we think that we've improved the situation over what we have now. And I'd be happy to answer any questions from anyone that would like to further discussion. Again, I think that something of this magnitude, we definitely need to really make sure we do a fantastic job with public outreach. I think that's important to do. So far, this has just been really presented to some local businesses like the Barter, and it's been to the infrastructure committee where it received just a unanimous show of support from that body.
Okay, council, how do you all want to proceed with this? Do you want, I know we're not ready to go vote on it August 6th, but how do you all want to move forward? Do you want to have a public meeting, put this on the website, and have a public discussion?
Please.
I suggest a public discussion as opposed to a show and tell.
Right.
So where people can actually talk to the council, like we've done some tonight. So is that feasible with you, Matt?
So, like advertise like a public hearing or a public input meeting?
Public meeting.
I think something on the order is what we did for Park Street a few weeks ago.
Are you proposing for folks to come and go? My favorite way is to, of course, this day and time, everybody's busy, they've got different work schedules, and they just pop in and come and go. But one thing I really enjoy is to make sure that the public understands these maps, exactly what we're gonna do, and go over it verbally, and you had them on display at the Park Street as well, like we did. But, I like to go over things very thoroughly and very methodical, so I want to make sure everybody understands which way we're going to put one-way road signs here, et cetera.
I think it would be good for, and this is just a suggestion, I think it would be good for all of the town council members to be present so that we can completely understand all the public's concerns, and then we can act intelligently on it. So maybe we could do it at a work session, or something like that. What do you think of?
And I would like to see us send this information or something similar to it, along with a notice of this, to those who live on these streets or directly affected, by these loading and unloading zones and so forth, to make sure they know that when this meeting's gonna take place and that they can come talk to.
Yeah, that's what we did for Park Street. We drew a radius around Park Street, and everyone affected in that radius got a letter.
Oh, you wanna put it on the agenda for the August or September meeting, which?
I'll do September.
What, Donna?
I'd probably wait till September.
September?
August is
We say it.
just 2 weeks away.
All right, can we put that on the agenda for the September work session?
And this will go on the website as well, this document.
Yes, we'll probably just try and,
Okay.
make it look any better than this. This is, we want to make sure we get out the best.
Okay,
lead
we're gonna do
we
what
can.
Al suggested, contact all the people affected by it on the streets that are involved.
And I just want to suggest, you want to,
Like anything.
start at 7, or you want to maybe have like a public presentation part from 6 to 7, then your council work session starts at 7?
I think we'll probably, we have schedules, and I think we'll probably discuss that at the August meeting, exactly what date we're going to set that. And how we're going to handle it.
May I make a suggestion, when you do put this paper online, could you make bullet points so that everybody's clear on what we're doing? Like, I know it's obvious that you're adding, but it's nicer to read it as well as to see your picture here.
We can do that, certainly, so it's like, right, College Street is one way, Church Street is one way,
Right.
adding parking here.
Right, yep. Make
I'll-
it very clear.
And I just want to be clear, we won't put anything online until we establish the date for the meeting.
Okay.
So we don't want to start fielding questions about something
Right.
before, we need to get that meeting established, so staff can have the time to say, if you want to come to this date, so.
Will you make a note for us to establish that meeting in the August meeting?
We can put as a proposal, can we put it as, can we, this is proposing what we're doing, is that what you wanna do?
Yeah, and, well, we will, once we set that date, and we'll put this up as a draft, because here again, it is a draft. The good thing is, as Matt explained many times, this is a relatively cheap fix, we're basically talking about a few signs and some paint.
Right.
So, and it will accomplish a great deal, of course, if we do it the correct way. We do need to make sure, and we've got a lot of folks affected, a lot of residents affected, we've got some business owners affected.
It'll be changing some people's lives here.
Yeah, and so we do need to make sure we get that out.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we tried to identify the affected driveway entrances on here. And the yellow circle didn't show up as well as I hoped, but there are, if you look closely, you can see some yellow circles of some driveways. Like on Church Street, there's 3 driveways. Some Happy Agency, I think there's a few there.
Yeah.
One of the things that was brought up in the infrastructure committee meeting that probably needs to be addressed is the Methodist Church's parking lot. We need to make sure we talk to them about that. Are we changing that? We're changing how they get in and out of the parking lot.
The Methodist Church parking lot is.
No, that's another block away.
Yeah, that's another, this is the on street parking next to the Methodist Church, but
It
not
is
the
the
parking
on-street
lot.
parking beside it.
It shouldn't affect their parking.
And it'll make our parking lot safer than this there.
Okay.
And certainly, if you, as the council, if you have time, you percolate this in your mind for the next couple of days and have any comments, just let me know. And we'll definitely tweak this in advance of that September. Like I said, this is certainly meant to be a starting point of discussion, not this is what I think we should do.
Well, just one of the comments, I want to remind you, one of the comments out of the infrastructure committee meeting is removing some parking on Main Street so you can see how to get out on Church Street.
Exactly.
Yep, that's, I certainly agree with that.
Bordered off, that's what that was, so that would be one suggestion.
I was talking about on this side.
Oh, that's it.
Okay, and I do have one little small question. On Legend, I don't see teal green but the handicap parking is darker blue. What's the teal green, is that block?
That's rework the site, the street parking to improve the site distance. Yeah, see, there at Church Street, yeah,
Yes, sir,
that's,
I see.
I thought we were talking about the south side of the street, of Main Street, removing parking, because you can't see coming out of Church.
either way is tough. But,
Yeah, so we need to take that into account also. Thank you, Mr. Ray.
Yes, thank you, Dylan.
You're welcome.
For Mr. Bollick.
All right, so we're gonna set a date, if you always. Matt?
Sorry.
Discussion regarding ground lease agreement with Sunset Power.
Yes, you should have that in your packet. This was the draft agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was the draft agreement, with Sunset, Communications, in regards to a POP, or point of presence. I sound really intelligent, although Floyd will have to tell me what that is. Site, that, we, established with BVU a number of years ago, and it's located on town property. I believe, Mr. Bailey actually submitted a map to show you where it is. It is in the, it's in the Latcher Field complex. You can't even see it from the street. I mean, you've got to drive up a driveway behind the building. With the sale of, BVU to Sunset, they will be using that building as part of their infrastructure. Of course, Sunset's a private, communications company, as opposed to a publicly traded entity as BVU was. We do need to have a ground lease agreement. The agreement that you have in front of you has already been vetted by our attorney from Penn Stewart, Mr. Bell. In simple terms, it's a 5-year lease for $5,000 a year. We'll renew it every 5 years. They asked about extending it longer. After some consultation with Mr. Bell, we both agree that we don't want to bind future councils to an agreement that they may not like. So, 5 years based upon tenure and service. I mean, those of you who are just elected, you're gonna be running out of that time about the time we start renegotiating. So in 4 years, we'll look at renegotiating another 5-year deal.
Could we actually lease this to a private entity without offering it for competitive bids?
We can, based upon how the sale is being sold. It's an asset that's in there. Nobody else would be able to buy it because the asset is locked into the Sunset deal.
They'd have to buy the equipment.
Right.
On the other hand,
I get it, and Mr. Bailey has raised that concern too. The issue, they're selling, the structure is not ours. The structure is even theirs. The only thing that we own is the ground it's sitting on. And so that's where we couldn't lease anything but that ground space. However, another entity has a structure sitting on it. So this lease is strictly for the exact footprint of that ground.
Okay, council, you wanna put this on the August agenda?
It has been sent to the paper for advertisement on July the 30th.
And a representative from Sunset will be at the meeting, just in case you do have any questions about that.
Okay, next item is discussion regarding the potential sale or lease of Summer Falls.
Here again, I think we voted July 2nd meeting to proceed with lease option. We did go ahead and advertise for lease options, and then I think about halfway through the month, I got a phone call and said, we might be interested in selling. We did a search. We can sell the property. Before we sell anything, of course, our attorney recommends that we go ahead and do a full title search just to make sure there's no other outliers. But there was nothing in the deed as it was deeded to us that would prevent us from selling the property. At present, as of close of business today, we did receive one bid that is to be open tomorrow. There could 16 people will show up tomorrow morning with bid offers, but we're supposed to open those at 10:05.
5 in the morning. We don't know if the bid is legal and compliant. I mean, we, you know, it's in an envelope in our office.
10:05.
10:05. Well, hey, look, we're not all retired. We have schedules. We're down to the minute around here.
That's management, that's the most important thing.
You know, and really, at the pleasure of council, we, you know, there are some issues, I won't say issues, you know, as soon as we advertise, you know, I got a complaint of, you know, why are we in the property management business? I think, that, you know, valid complaint, I get it, understand. However, this was given to us as an asset, with really no real stipulation of where to go with it. We did lease it previously, that tenant was a happy tenant, some things changed and they moved away, which is why the lease came over. So, we do reserve the right, you know, we can cancel the bids, we can see how they come in, it just depends on where you all wanna go.
Well, I have a question or two, because I've been asked questions about this as well. Does it have a shower in it? The other question is, could we rent it like an Airbnb? And I'm like, you know, we are not in the business of doing things of that nature, and I understand that. I wouldn't wanna do that myself anyway, because that's a lot of work, guys. But anyway, long story short, is it, what we gotta look at is, how much money are we gonna be making off this? You know, you gotta look at this twofold. We're not in the business of the town, of owning property and leasing property, et cetera. But I look at it in another fashion. How much money are you gonna be able to get from a, you know, from a bank? I mean, in other words, if you had that money in a bank, like for interest, how much money would you get if you had that money in a bank sitting there somewhere? You'd probably get more for rent. But, I mean, I'm just putting this out here just for discussion for everybody to know.
How much do we collect for rent? Was it $300?
It was $300 a month.
$300 a month.
That was the
which is
last.
very,
But that was
very
her
cheap.
proposal and
You
you
know,
only
I
wanted
mean, when I say cheap, I mean inexpensive, very inexpensive.
And I, you know, I will add, you know, that this is in the historic district. This structure is not suitable for housing. You know, I believe Jason's been in there. In fact, this very week, because of some water issues, we are pouring a curbing right next to this building. So, you know, there's ongoing expense with everything we own. We're gonna talk about another one of those in a minute.
Yeah, that's another reason why we may not want to be in the property management
So,
business, yeah.
so, you know, and that point that you raised is very, very valid. You know, I think here again, we gotta look at the issue is, we're gonna look at making a decision that's either gonna bind future councils or it's gonna alleviate them, and we're gonna take some heat, whatever decision we make.
I personally think we ought to do the same thing with this issue that we did with another one, and put it on the, proposed discussion on, September.
Not this fall. We can verify that for sure, but I don't think that's the case.
Well, it's been changed in the last 500 years. But I also know that the town does not make good landlord.
You're exactly right. You know, I grew up in that business, and it wasn't fun growing up, and it's not fun now.
Do we have any
Sounds
kind
like
of
this.
expectation of what we could get out of this property?
We've not had a.
I mean, I'm just curious, like,
appraisal
I was
done.
kind of thinking what Cindy's thinking, you know, $300 a month, just using it as a benchmark, you know, how many years will we have to collect rent, which, you know,
But you-
we had
well,
to compensate.
Just remember, you're not collecting property taxes on it.
If you sell it,
You're
you
not taking
collect
any
property
tax basis
taxes.
on it.
I mean, I'm just thinking,
And
you know.
you
we
have
may
an
take-
expense of maintaining it.
And that's a
Right.
good point too, Mr. McBeth. And how much do you, could you figure that? I mean, could you come up with a price on how much we'd be losing in your mind, you know, just kind of off the top of your head?
Well, it depends what, you know, what you use the property for. I mean, right now, it's just, you right now, it's been off the tax base, you know, for, I don't know how many years,
Several years.
you know?
Yeah, 2008?
Yeah.
10
I think if we could sell
If
it.
you even looked, if you looked at the tax-based property, what it was back in 2008, you can get a pretty good idea of what you're losing every year. So you gotta take that into consideration, and $300 a month is not gonna cover also the overhead that you're gonna, and the insurance and everything else you gotta do to upkeep the place.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was pretty
So
inexpensive.
your $300 is not gonna cut, you're not making it $300 a
We're
month.
better off selling it.
You are, you're better off selling it.
If you're looking at it as a business, sell it.
Yeah, you sell it, then you get a tax base.
You got a tax rate, you got a
You get a
tax
tax
rate.
base, and you have more income coming off the tax base than you do keeping it on the property.
But
No
you-
need for the property.
You need to make a decision. by
Can I ask for a point of order?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we're out of order, I'm asking for a point of order, because our clerk can't take minutes with everybody talking, she's trying to record everybody's conversation.
Sorry about that.
Let me stop this. I think we've all agreed that this is gonna be controversial with the public. It seems to me the only decision we need to make tonight is, are we gonna have another public discussion where we talk with the public and then act on it later? And if so, my suggestion is we schedule that public discussion in September at the work session, just like we did the other day. So,
Mr. Mayor, I don't disagree, but actually the more pressing issue is,
10:05.
what am I gonna tell the person in the morning
At 10:05.
at
You
10:05?
That's right.
Are we gonna, cause.
You don't have to accept the bid.
And see, and we don't have to accept the bid, but I've gotta get a feeling for the way council.
I think, I'm just speaking for myself, I wanna sell it.
Yeah, I personally would,
I was saying.
full speed ahead, let's sell it.
What about you, Al?
Did it go public then? I mean, did it
No,
go?
we advertised.
We did advertise it.
Okay, Jim, go
I think
go ahead.
I thought that's what you said.
Let's let Jim speak.
I would not accept the bid. I would tell the person to have a public hearing regarding this. Before you have the public hearing, I would recommend you get that property appraised, so
Yeah.
you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's.
You gotta look at
yeah.
what your odds are, what your options.
Then you know what kind of bid to accept or not, and then have the bidding process be open. I knew nothing about it until right now.
Okay.
Yes, and do the title search.
Is the title?
I think your sense of the council is we want to sell it, but, I don't know how can you all work with that?
We'll figure something out, even if it's wrong. How's that?
So are you accepting bids in the morning?
Well, I mean, you know, we've already advertised that, and we've already had one submitted, so we're locked into that process. However, based on this, we will just decline all bids.
Okay, but I guess that's my question. If you're declining all bids, I will not come up to your office at 10 in the morning, otherwise I'm gonna bring my bid.
Yeah, so.
Say it like you sleep in.
Yeah, so I will sleep in because we're gonna have to decline the bid.
Okay.
Okay. This, the next sticky wicket discussion regarding the Fields Penthouse.
Oh, that's a big sticky wicket.
Tony Sullivan.
Can we sell it too?
What?
Can we sell it too?
You have a offer?
I've got an idea about what to do.
You buy Summers, you get Phil's Pen for free.
And you gotta take care of it though.
Yeah.
Well, it's got a nice fence around it now.
It is beautiful. They did a wonderful job, and thank you, Rick Statzer, because he had a hand in doing that. It looks beautiful.
In the research on the Fields Penthouse, let me state first, there are no deed restrictions on the Fields Penthouse which would prohibit sale, period. However, in the minutes, a very long time ago, when we took possession of the Fields Penthouse, the council at that time agreed that the town would continue in the efforts to maintain the structure and its integrity. Now, with that being said, this has been beaten around forever. I think I sent you all volumes of information, reports, geological surveys, photographs, which if you wanted to pop photographs up, I've got, Jason is here. He and his crew went in most recently and took photographs.
But essentially, and I'll defer to Jason, it comes down to what was issued in the report from the previous planner, Matthew Johnson, who authored all of that, or had all that work done. At some point, council's got to decide, are we gonna fix it, or are we gonna tear it down? And it's just, while that's simple, I understand there's politics and feelings behind it.
And that is really our only two options here.
What?
That's really our only two options.
Fix it or tear it down.
Fix it or tear it down.
You fix it.
We can't just leave it sitting there as it is. We have to do something.
Fixing it will cost on the order between, and, you know, we're going off of an old estimate, I'm gonna say between 1.5 and $2 million.
Probably more than add another 50%.
And you probably could,
We got that estimate in 2015.
Yeah.
And-
So, another 50%.
I have a question.
well, hang on, I'm gonna get you. And I guess the question for council is, if we decide today to fix it, and we invest that money in it, what's the use
Yeah,
going
what's-
to
what are we
be
gonna do with it?
after that? And how are we gonna look at recouping, or do we even want to recoup the estimated $2 million cost? I mean, and that's, I mean, those are the questions that we have to wrestle with. And Floyd, I'm sorry, go ahead.
My biggest question is that piece of property on the historic registry?
It is.
And if it is, there are laws regulating its disposal.
I'm glad you brought that up. Mr. Boswell did do some research, and we would be, help me if I'm wrong.
Only if it's federally owned. We haven't accepted any
But
type
we-
of funds from any.
But we have an
any organization.
HPRB that's given
Yes,
the
we
authority
do.
to.
We would have to follow those
We would have to
procedures.
go through that.
We would have to go before the HPRB to ask for permission to demo, if that's what the council chooses. Probably would be denied, and then we would have to go through the process of taking it before council to put it up for sale for at least a year.
Would
I'd
they
like
have-
to see us
Yeah.
establish a committee to look at the Fields Pit House and figure out what to do with it and how soon, how quickly it needs to be done, and report back to us ASAP.
I would love for that to happen as well. Did you guys?
Do you have some members in mind?
Okay, who do you want to appoint this committee? Do you have any idea of how you want? You want to let Tony do it, or do you want the council to do it, or how we appoint the
I think
committee?
council ought to do it.
The council will do it.
I wonder, can I ask somebody in the audience if they're interested or not?
Let's wait until the council decides what it wants to do. Let's put this on the agenda for August the 6th, for the town council. You all be thinking about who you want on the committee. And maybe it's a good suggestion, might be a good suggestion for each one of us to appoint one member. That would be 5 people. I think that's a good sized committee. Is what my thought is. Is that all right with you guys?
Yes.
I think and that way the agenda item can just be limited to the appointment of the committee to study the Fields Pin House as opposed to the general discussion at that point.
Right. Okay. You got it, Kim?
Sir.
All right, moving right along. Discussion regarding the renewing the lease. Discussion regarding renewing the lease regarding the
regarding should not be.
Fairview. To regarding the Fairview property. Okay.
We're gonna double regard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we, the lease to Fairview expired back.
January, should have been renewed this year.
Should have been,
10 years.
should have been.
Repeat that.
The lease to February was a 10-year lease, should have been renewed in January. It was not, renewed. I know there were.
It was in February, I think,
February.
Tim, is not correct?
We should have received a written notification from the town to renew or not renew in January, 30 days before the 10-year term was up. That didn't happen. So it automatically ended because the town did not renew it. The town attorney failed to write the letter.
And the council did say that we wanted to renew it, we voted on that, but it didn't happen.
And I guess ultimately the question is do you want to renew it? I mean, that's ultimately the question. You know, here again, I'm chasing the gravy train on this, and I'm way far behind. However, you know, I do know, and I do have Mr. Boswell here who's been quite involved. You know, we have made improvements to the leased property. Here again, we made improvements to property that is not ours. You know, the lease is now expired. We made improvements to property and that we don't have, should we not renew the lease. But it is at the will of council. We do have a parcel there that I believe was gifted to us, that we use and maintain. I think we've got a couple barns on our property, but it seems to me most of the meat, the corn crib, sawmill, blacksmith shop, pavilion, that's all on leased property, I think, in addition to the cabin. That was, the cabin on our property, or is that on leased property?
So the cabin's on our property.
Yeah, not on our property. Trying to figure out what, so, maybe at the will of council, which way are we going?
All right. Jim, are you all right with the lease? Are you okay with the lease that's in here? All right, have you seen it?
That was the original
That's the
lease.
2008.
The original lease, no, if you all are interested in maintaining historic Fairview and releasing the 20 acres that we leased to you, we would want to
Jim, we can't hear you. Would you mind coming up to the podium?
We'd like to know how serious you are about Fairview, historic Fairview, the gift we made with the historic house in the 5 acres. The other properties that you just listed were built by the Old Blade Anti-Tractor Association using their funds or donated funds, not town funds. They are on the leased property. I think that they gifted to the town the pavilion that they put up 2 years ago. So that pavilion's owned by the town, but it's on that leased property,
Yeah,
which was leased.
Was leased,
So.
Sort of like the point of present site that BVU's doing.
We really know, are you serious about this historic property? And if you're serious about leasing it, we'll talk to you. But a different lease, shorter term. Without lease, that was all favoring the town. We
Yes.
had no control over anything. We couldn't say yes, no, whatever. It was a total of 50 years, 10-year at clip, $1 per 10 years, we gave you $1 back. Basically, we gave you 20 acres for free, 50 years. We're not gonna do that again. We learned with the last town council, we go 5 years, and we'll have the right to say yes or no also. But we would talk to you. But first of all, we know how serious you are about this historic property and what's been going on. The Tractor Club's done a fantastic job.
Oh, yes.
The tour buses out
I
there,
personally think
all
it's
kinds of
great.
events.
Oh, I do too.
As far as historic property in town, that's where the action is. I wish y'all had shown up with
Well,
the tractor.
I'm serious about
last week.
when you talk about
Tearing
tearing
down Fields Penthouse, it makes people like this work.
Yeah, so, I want to know how serious you are.
Well, I don't wanna tear
I
it
don't
down.
believe you, I wanna live in this town.
I do too, I do too, but I don't, you go and look at everything, but I'm very
So-
serious about it, because
So,
I think it's a very good
serious
learning
things, get with us,
experience.
let us know, and we'll work something out with,
Okay,
with a
we
different
can
water.
give you a consensus tonight, I think. All right. I think we should,
I'll accept Jeff with Dr. Moore's terms, I have no problem with Dr. Moore's terms at all.
Oh,
Are we accepting without knowing them?
Well,
let's, he wants to know if we're serious about.
Yeah, we are
Okay,
serious,
okay.
yeah.
So then we'll have to negotiate on the lease.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
we'll get
yes.
together, and I would like, the Tractor Club was not protected under the last lease. And they are solely dependent upon donations, and folks are hesitant to make donations to them if they don't have a home.
home base. Without that leased property, they have no home base.
Okay.
So
We
we
understand.
want them protected under lease also. They were not under the last one.
Okay, the council is serious, and so I guess our staff will get with you.
Just minutes get with us.
Well, what we'll do is we'll put it on the agenda for August,
Oh, okay.
and then we'll go ahead and make a motion to negotiate
Okay,
and authorize the manager to negotiate.
okay, that's fine. All right, next item is.
May I say one more
Sure,
thing
you
about
can say whatever you
negotiations?
want to, whenever you want.
We would be willing to negotiate upon council approval of the lease agreement.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
Yeah.
the cart and the horse,
Yeah.
yes. However way that's gonna, I don't mean that in a bad way.
No, I get that.
I just wanted to add that word in there. Because Ms. Twitch also said, you know, make sure we knew the lease
Well,
terms of the lease. That's all we want to do.
Well, that's, what we would do is we'd make a motion to negotiate, then at the next council meeting, we bring you the lease and let, that would be.
Okay, that's good, there we go. I got that. See, maybe I didn't understand what you were saying. I'm
No.
sorry.
Okay, the next item is discussion regarding the purchase of blazers, et cetera, for the council.
Yeah,
So,
sorry, to bring this up, previous councils have all had a navy blue blazer that was embroidered. I get it, y'all probably don't want that, however, there are places that you're going to be, to get like that, just like that. Yeah.
Can I use it?
We can all borrow it.
Then I wouldn't have a navy blue blazer.
Well,
We
I'm
could
the
give
man.
it to
Terry
you.
has a navy blue blazer.
You can borrow mine.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I guess we're trying to get the feeling, there will be places that you will be seen as representatives of the town. Another option, which I think, we get that out to them, or not, another
I was
option.
waiting on the logo.
Sorry.
Be loaded.
I'm sorry. Another option is a button down, there's both men's and women's versions, that we could get embroidered with the logo that we're going to. And it's just as simple as that. Of course, obviously, it's much cheaper.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of it because I'm an individual and my vote's individual. And I dress accordingly the way that I think I need to dress. But I mean, that's my consensus for one person.
I find the town buying blazers to be a little frivolous.
I do too.
No, we're not talking about blazers, we're talking
No,
about
we're
sample
just
shirts.
talking about a shirt.
About shirts.
Yes, that we
Just
have.
like you wear 'em.
I'm
With just
Except
the
it's
logo.
embroidered.
I like to wear my own personal, clothes. I don't like the, I am me, so, I'm an individual and I'm
Cindy's
crafty.
opposed.
Yes.
So did Al.
What did he say?
So is
So
that.
is
So is Al. Cindy's opposed, Al's opposed.
I mean, I'm okay either way. I mean, I personally like the navy blue blazer, and I kinda like the idea of having the new logo. But that's just me.
All right.
I'm not really one.
Fine with a navy blazer also.
You're fine.
Light navy blazer, yeah.
Well,
How much do they cost?
I don't want,
Yeah, how much do they cost, just out of curiosity?
Well, I know one years ago was like $500, so I'm not gonna
Oh,
put
that's
that burden
ridiculous.
on.
No, that's
No,
ridiculous.
we weren't proposing the blazer
No, I
because
wasn't
nobody
proposing the
uses-
blazer because I was proposing
Just
the
a
long sleeve
cotton.
cotton
Well, if I
shirt.
can't have a blazer, I want a shirt.
I want to, Donna, how about you?
We can do a tunic for you ladies, whatever, it was just having the logos, if you go to these meetings, if you're going to the county meetings and things of this sort that
And let me
you-
throw in one other option to
Yeah.
muddy the water.
I'll take a pen.
Let me throw in another option. We do have lapel pins that are being ordered
Yeah, I like that.
with that logo, and here, let me give you one. Right now, see, that's how Miss Switch got hers.
These don't cost very much, though, do they?
Well, the other option, the one thing that we're thinking about is, you will be going to legislative sessions in Richmond, you will be going other places where people aren't gonna know who you are. The other option we can do is a name tag with that same logo, magnetic backing, doesn't poke holes in your shirt. So these are this is why this comes up. And it's a small issue until you get somewhere else and people are going, where are you from?
Yeah.
So,
I think the name tag with the Avian logo would suit me. Fine. And
Is that
that's
all right with you,
only
Al?
me. Yeah.
Maybe a
Okay
ball and
with you,
chain.
Okay, how about you?
Yeah.
I go for name tags.
Name tags.
okay.
we will research, and you've definitely found the least expensive option.
Good.
That's right.
I like that. It's all about management.
Chuck likes that.
I'm good with that.
Thank you, Janet. Mr. Banner, excuse me.
You got one more page. You got one more, I'm sorry, you got one more item.
What is that, adjournment?
No. I'm not letting you go that quick. We've got a lady sitting beside me, we promoted and I'm not paid.
All right.
This discussion regarding the newly appointed clerk salary.
Oh, discussion regarding newly appointed clerk salary. All right, so tell us, Mr. Bennett, what you come up with.
I believe I sent you a scale, a few weeks ago in regards to salary numbers. Of course, Ms. Kingsley's sitting beside me, her salary's public, so we'll talk about her even though she may turn red. Her current salary is $48,426. Of course, that is not in the clerk's range. We have the clerk's range budgeted at $55,000. As per comparable, one of the closest ones, and I think I sent you that, was the town of Percival, and I think I sent you a $60,000 figure, well, the actual range for Percival is 55 to 65. Comparable size, of course, a totally different income level. I think I sent you a scale with the numbers by percentage, if you wanted to go up into that range. A 15% increase from her current salary would be almost $7,200 a year, which would put her at 55.6, almost 55.7. And then I gave you a scalable all the way up to 25% increase, which puts her at $60,500 a year. No matter what you choose, we will make it retroactive back to her appointment of July 2nd. July 2nd was right, that July 2nd. And I will say, in support of Ms. Kingsley, that she's not the one jumping up and down to have this done. She's like, I'm fine, just whenever. But we do need to get her into that clerk's range, and I quite honestly just need you all to decide, because ultimately she is your employee.
Okay, what do you have a recommendation, Tony? We've got her under your supervision now, so.
You do. I gave you a range, and I gave you a range for a reason. Because I want everybody to make sure that they understand the value of what you're getting for the. I will tell you administratively, probably one of the most valuable people we have in this town is your clerk. I don't know that there's a dollar value that we can put on what she does, because the jobs are so varied. With the changes that you've gone through, one of probably 2 or 3 people in this building that sort of know where all the keys are is your clerk.
Okay, Council, have you all given any thought to this, or do you have any suggestions? I think 18% would be an appropriate figure. Yeah? Okay, I guess we've got to vote on it at the meeting.
We will, and I'll have the proper paperwork prepared at the 18% rate, it'd actually be for you to sign, I believe, at the end of the meeting.
So are we assigning anyone additional duties without adjusting their rate of pay accordingly? And that's the problem with working directly for the council instead of working for the town manager. We're working that way.
I think we've made a good decision passing that resolution last time.
And I do want to reiterate, I appreciate the sentiment. Kim has not said a word about this. So, she's been very patient.
Kim, you need to take up for yourself a little bit.
You'll find out, I don't say a lot. I listen, that's my job.
Okay, one more thing, Council. You all, I think you all received, as I did, a letter from Mrs. Kindig, and
I sure did, that was very thoughtful.
Yes.
And, you agree with it? Anyway, I don't know what Matt's got to say about this, but we do have a rating system that Matt follows, and I was say this quickly. And I think that we need to respond to this letter, and I really frankly don't know the rating system, so I'd kind of like for you to draft something for us, if that's, or Tony, draft something for us in response to this, and I'll let you speak now.
Well, Mrs. Kindig is not the first person to complain about some of the paving decisions that are made. It's certainly something we take very seriously here. Things that we take into consideration when we decide which streets we need to focus on resurfacing each year. Obviously, the condition of the street, the traffic volume, the expense to pave that length of street. And this is very important, a lot of people don't think about this, is the connectivity. I will give credence to paving a street that is a through street versus a cul-de-sac. A cul-de-sac, obviously, is, in my opinion, can wait a little bit longer on being resurfaced as a street that actually has connectivity. Things we don't take into consideration about repaving are the age of the streets. If your street hasn't been paved and it's still in good condition, then that means we did a good job paving it. However many years ago it was paved. I just certainly want to reiterate that we do not take any socioeconomic information in our street maintenance plan, so I want to just reiterate that. So I'll be happy to draft up something for the town management to send out to respond to Mrs. Kindig.
Okay.
I think it's important. May I share what you shared with me?
Yes, you may.
Mrs. Fletchen had spoken to, I believe, this lady, and I think one of the things that we're dealing with, as both staff and a council, is we're dealing with a promise from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think a promise was made by either a member or a candidate for a council that said, you know, within 10 years we'll get your street paved, and that was 20 years ago. However, when this first came up, Matt and I went out there and we rode this street from one end to the other, and admittedly, you know, there's some cracked sealant all over that street. While it's not aesthetically pleasing, it's functional, more than functional. And I think ultimately the issue with her is it's just
It's just the appearance of it.
Well, it is ugly.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is ugly.
It
And I have had a couple of people come to me and say that when they're riding bikes and so on and so forth on it, that it's somehow slippery or sticky, or, you know, and I don't know if that's a true safety issue or if they're just making it sound a little worse than maybe it is. But I have had probably a dozen people.
This is a very popular topic.
Yeah, it really is.
It is. You know, and the realization though, you know, funding for paving in this year's budget is
375.
I was gonna say 350, but could be 375.
And that helped me, that's divided into two disbursements, basically.
Yeah, we try to do some in the fall and some in the spring, because I don't want to get killed with all of it in the spring. And Matt's been very, very good to work with as far as making sure we do it that way for cash flow purposes. And I appreciate Matt's willingness to divide it up.
Just to give you just for, I guess, maybe to scale, if we tried to pave all of Fairway Drive, that would eat up probably about 2/3 of our repaving budget. So, we take it very seriously. We try to make that money go as efficiently and as we can. So,
Matt, you've already done the rating for the fall, is that right, for the fall paving?
We're going to revisit it one more time before we make a final decision. I mean, we keep it updated. We update it continuously as we go out and look at the streets. But so the fall paving list is not set in stone. It's not finalized.
When you can, would you let either the whole neighborhood know what our plans are? I think that would be best, just the whole neighborhood, because that way they'll all know. But even especially the ones that have voiced their concern, they need to be alerted to what we're gonna do first, I guess, or either or. I mean, in my opinion, I think it should be everybody. We shouldn't let them.
No chance you're paving the rest of Fairway Drive in the fall.
Well, you know, we've already expended half of
I'm
the
joking,
budget.
I'm joking.
You know, that's where we, you know, we've done our spring paving, so half of what we.
That's already gone.
Yeah.
Well, no.
We're in a new budget.
We're in a new budget cycle.
It's a
Sorry.
new budget cycle, so it's a.
So right now, the.
Clock
paving-
started over
Yeah,
on
that's right.
July
We've had
second,
July one.
first, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, I think the biggest thing is just letting people know that we're listening and we care.
Sure.
And know that, and, tell them that we're listening and we know it, and when we can, we'll pave it.
It's, you know, I would certainly like to point out that for both Country Club and Winterham, you know, we did recognize that some of their streets, you know, needed some attention, so we made a point to pave the entrance streets. So, you know, the front of Fairway and the front of Birdie was paved, and Winterham Drive up to the clubhouse was paved, because that's the main traffic area.
Yeah, you guys stopped about 40 feet before my house, thank God, because I got accused of getting my road paved. I seriously did. I was like, nope, they stopped about 40 feet before my house.
Okay, this, Tony, help me here, this letter was addressed to the town council, not the staff, is that correct?
Well,
We all.
each of you got one, and I got one as well.
Let me suggest something, would you all draft up something and have it at the August meeting for us to look at, a response to this?
We can do that. I think just, you know, the inclusion of the scale, that is used and, is very helpful. And so, yeah, we can do that.
Okay. All right. Well, that finishes the agenda now, then adjournment is the next item, right?
Yes.
All right. Adjourned.
All in favor, stand up.
We don't have to, we can't vote, that's right.